Chapter 582. Wuyue Province, Moshang City, Yanbing Mountain, ancestral grounds of the Ice God sect. A strong gust of wind blew through the layers of pine trees. Flowers bloomed brilliantly from time to time. Lu Qing sat on a chair on the balcony. His eyes reflected the beautiful scenery, but they were unfocused. He seemed to be in a daze, leisurely. After a long while, he picked up his phone, unlocked the screen, and quickly typed a few words. My internal training of root pulp is close to physical invulnerability. The realm of all-seeing God is also at this level. I'm just short of breaking through the barrier of connecting heaven and earth. Then, I'll be able to make the leap. In terms of cultivation, connecting heaven and earth is obtained naturally after the condensation of the Jin Dan and the fusion of essence, qi, spirit, and will. It will gradually become stronger as the Jin Dan matures and grows. On the path of martial arts, it's about connecting one's will and raising one's spirit. Through the normal interaction between the body and the outside world, one can find a way to influence the heaven and earth. The reflection of the surroundings in the ice mirror is a simplified feature. If I want to break through, I have to work on these two aspects at the same time. I have to sort myself out, find common points, and walk the path of physical invulnerability that belongs to Dan equilibrium. After writing this paragraph, Lu Qing flipped through the previous notes and fell into deep thought again. After breaking the Jin Dan and removing the hidden dangers, Shi Zhengwo insisted that Yan Zhika take him away so as not to be an eyesore. However, considering that his root pulp wasn't stable enough and his body hadn't recovered from his injuries, it wasn't convenient for him to travel long distances. Therefore, Shi Zhengwo reluctantly brought him back and left him in the ancestral grounds with a beautiful environment and few people to recuperate. Yan Zhika accompanied him for a few days until he regained some mobility. Only then did she fly to Connecticut and return to her increasingly busy studies. Lu Qing planned to recuperate for another week before returning to Shushan. He would stay at home for 10 to 20 days to accompany his parents before returning to America. He would be far away from attention and focus on his recovery. Of course, after confirming that there were no problems, he immediately called Qi Fang and told her that he was almost fully recovered thanks to the advancement of technology and martial arts. As for his friends, he couldn't inform them one by one, nor could he explain in detail. He simply posted on his WeChat moments and said that his recovery was better than expected. He received countless likes and blessings. Dragon King had allowed him to re-sign with the club. However, he wished to enter Longhu Club only after he had attained physical invulnerability. He wanted to prove that he was worthy of the contract. While recuperating, Lu Qing didn't slack off. Whenever he was free, he couldn't help but think about his future path, looking for a unique blend of cultivation and martial arts based on himself. For this reason, he changed his habit of not keeping a diary since he was young. Whenever he had new ideas, and new understandings, he would pick up his phone, type them out in detail, and save them in many ways so that he could review and sort them out in the future. It was not until now that he finally understood why every sect had their predecessors' notes. He also understood why the martial arts masters of the past had the habit of recording their experiences, and opinions. Not only was it convenient for the younger generation to refer to and cultivate, it was also helpful for them to organize their thoughts, preserve their ideas, and record the untraceable past. Lu Qing often regretted it now. If he had kept a complete record of his experiences and feelings from the start of body forging to Dan equilibrium, he would definitely be able to see something different now that he was rereading it. Perhaps he would have found the key and opened up a new path without George and the rest having to make breakthroughs. Sigh, a good memory is not as good as a lousy pen. Now that I think about it, all I can remember is balance, rotation, the universe, the starry sky, and other general concepts. As his thoughts fluctuated, Lu Qing's heart skipped a beat. He turned his head and looked at the corridor that led to the balcony. He saw a girl in a white t-shirt, jeans, and light-colored running shoes walking over gracefully. Her eyes were misty and filled with love. It was Mo Jingting. Young martial uncle, you seem to be having a good time. She walked over with a faint smile, pulled out a chair, and sat beside him. She picked up the teapot, flipped over the cup, and poured herself a full cup. While doing all this, she kept looking at Lu Cheng with interest and curiosity. She didn't expect to meet young Marshall Uncle, whom she hadn't seen in a long time, when she took a break from work to come back to the mountains for a holiday. He doesn't look too good and looks sickly. It seems that the injury back then was more terrible than the rumors said. It's been more than half a year and he's still so weak. Also, Master had mentioned that the most serious and troublesome thing for young Marshall Uncle was the sequelae. It was said that he would lose most of his combat ability. Thinking of this, Mo Jingting felt that she was no longer as restrained and cautious when facing Lu Cheng as before. They seemed to be able to talk to each other as equals again. "Aren't you busy with variety shows? Why are you here?" Lu Cheng asked with a plain smile, enjoying the mountain breeze. Just a while ago, when he was chatting with Ku, she mentioned that a variety show was very popular recently. The status of the participants had risen a level, including Mo Jingting. Mo Jingting sipped her tea and turned to look at the sea of pine trees. She replied with a sigh and a smile, "If you're tired, just go home and rest. It's quiet here and the air is good. Every time I stay here for a few days, my mood will become very good." After pausing for a few seconds, she asked casually, "Young Marshall Uncle, are you here to rest?" "Yeah." Lu Cheng didn't hide it. Mo Jingting retracted her gaze and smiled thoughtfully. "At that time, I had just entered the music industry and felt that I was full of energy, had a loud voice, and had excellent control of my abdominal cavity and other body parts. I was considered a good singer in the KTV and didn't care about singing skills. In the end, when I entered the recording studio for the first time, I almost broke down and cried all the way back to the apartment. After that, I put down my pride and studied seriously with the instructor for half a year before I was considered a beginner. From then on, I knew that there's no obstacle that can't be overcome. It all depends on your attitude." Lu Cheng almost laughed and shook his head slowly. "You don't have to comfort me in such a roundabout way. I'm fine now. I'm really fine now." Mo Jingting giggled and said, "Young Marshall Uncle's mental fortitude is great." She didn't dwell on this topic and suddenly had an idea. She smiled and asked, "Young Marshall Uncle, are you interested in doing business?" "Huh?" Lu Cheng was a little unaccustomed to the sudden change in topic. Mo Jingting chuckled and said, "You know that there's a big film company in the sect, right? In the past 1 or 2 years, online TV series and movies have been developing very quickly. I plan to start a business with my senior brothers and senior sisters to test the waters in this area. When the time comes, each of us will invest a sum of money and go to the sect fund to raise funds. If it develops well, the sect's film and television company will buy it. If we want to sell it, we can sell it. If we want to keep a certain amount of shares, we can keep a certain amount of shares. We're all family, so it's easy to talk to each other. No matter what happens to young Marshall Uncle in the future, just based on his inhuman stage and the 2 mighty ones with physical invulnerability behind him, even if they don't take money, they can get a share. However, there's no need to say that out loud. This is poaching from the Ice God's sect." Lu Cheng was speechless. He took a sip of tea and said, "Forget it. You guys do it yourselves. Don't drag me in." "Really?" Mo Jingting was surprised. "This is a good thing for free and young Marshall Uncle doesn't want to accept it. If I'm interested in the future, I'll look for you guys again." Lu Cheng declined tactfully. "In the future, the professional Ku will be in charge of the family's investments. I don't need to blindly get involved and waste my energy. Wouldn't it be better to spend my time thinking about physical invulnerability?" Seeing that young Marshall Uncle's attitude was gentle but firm, Mo Jingting didn't say anything more. After exchanging a few pleasantries, she got up and left. She walked along the corridor towards her fixed residence, her heart full of doubts. That's weird. In young Marshall Uncle's current situation, shouldn't he be looking for a way out and find ways to make money for the rest of his life? Shouldn't he hit it off with us immediately? Why isn't he moved at all? He didn't even ask about the price. Is it because the blow is too big and he's so disheartened that he doesn't want to do anything? Lu Qing didn't care what Mo Jingting was thinking. Seeing that lunchtime was approaching and the servants were about to deliver the food, he stood up slowly and casually took a picture of the beautiful mountain scenery outside the balcony with his smartphone. He first sent it to his sleeping little fairy and then posted it separately on Weibo, WeChat Moments, and other places. He even added a poem, "In April, the fragrance of the mortal world ends, and the peach blossoms in the mountain temple begin to bloom." Not long after, while he was enjoying the delicious food, he suddenly received a call from Talker. "Ching, you're F***king in Moshang?" Little Ming asked in surprise. Lu Qing asked in confusion, "How did you know? Do you think I'm stupid? When you sent the picture, you turned on your GPS." Kai Zongming said in annoyance and amusement. "We're in Moshang too. Do you want to come and visit?" This year's University Martial Arts Nationals competition is in Moshang. Lu Qing suddenly realized. If things were going normally, he would definitely pay attention to the Songqing University Martial Arts Club's next journey. Who knew that such a thing would happen to him? His mood, energy, and other aspects were all affected. He only occasionally heard a few words from Little Ming. For example, Deng Yang broke through to the dance stage at the end of last year. He also understood the concept of withdrawing. Under the leadership of the two, Songqing University and Shannon worked together to eliminate the previous runner-up, Shanbei, who had a gap in strength, and advanced into the nationals together. As for where the nationals would be held, he forgot to ask at that time and didn't remember to check later. "Hey, it's been less than a year and you've completely forgotten about us?" "Hey, it's always the newcomers who laugh, but the old ones who cry." Kai Zongming pretended to be sad and said, "We're in Moshang, Yellow Crane Hotel. Do you want to come? Just say the word." Lu Qing smiled and said, "Okay, I'll make an appointment with a driver. I'll let you know when I confirm. There's no one on this mountain. I can't even get a taxi. I can only find the general affairs of the sect. TSK, are you cultivating immortality on the mountain?" Kai Zongming scolded jokingly. The next afternoon, Lu Qing walked into the Yellow Crane Hotel with his hands in his pockets. He saw the talker, Kai Zongming, who was as elegant as ever. He was dressed casually and looked more mature than before. He was more attractive to girls than before. The only problem was that he still hadn't taken the step to the dance stage. "You've been emptied?" Little Ming blurted out in confusion. Didn't Qing say that his body was recovering better than expected? This is called better than expected. Then how bad was the estimation? Lu Qing sneered and said, "Talker, are you blind? Can't you see that there's no construction without destruction? Can't you see that this is the second time I've been injured? I didn't look this bad in the photos taken by the reporters earlier." "The second time you've been injured?" Kai Zongming asked blankly. "The price to pay for complete recovery." Lu Qing explained concisely. Kai Zongming suddenly understood and patted Lu Qing on the shoulder. "I knew you'd live for 1,000 years. It's not that easy to leave." Lu Qing almost staggered from the pat. He said unhappily, "Take care of the patient. TSK, I have to enjoy this feeling before you recover." The feeling of sending a high-ranked dance stage expert flying with one slap. Little Ming gave him another slap. Of course, this time he didn't use any strength. While talking, he led Lu Qing into his room. Deng Yang, He Yan Shaoling and the rest were already waiting there. Lu, senior. Yan Shaoling was the first to speak. She stuttered and shouted, "How's your recovery? I heard from Senior that it's much better than expected." Lu Qing chuckled and answered, "Yes, I'll be able to return to the arena in 3 or 4 months. Yeah." Yan Shaoling waved her arms and spun around subconsciously. "I have to tell them and make them happy." She took out her phone and posted on the fan forum. "I saw Senior. I saw Lu Qing. He said that he'll be fully recovered in 3 or 4 months and can compete. The forum was boiling with excitement. The rest of the people began to talk about it excitedly. Many reporters would come over every day to take a look to see if there was any news material. After discovering the Eternal Nightfall post, they hurriedly checked the contract filing of the Martialist Association through internal channels. Then, they came up with a piece of news: Lu Cheng is about to make a comeback but has nothing to do with Longhu. Does this mean that his potential has been exhausted? P.S. There are only 100 votes left to reach the top 10. Don't waste them. Expired votes are invalid. Chapter 583. In Kai Zongming's room, He Zi glanced at the excited Yan Shaoling and said with disdain, "Don't worry about her. She'll be fine in a while." Lu Cheng chuckled and looked around at the crowd. "At first, I thought that it would be good enough if one of you could reach the dance stage. This would mean that our martial arts club is on the right track. Who would have thought that in less than a year after I left, Deng Yang and He Zi would successively comprehend, withdraw, and successfully advance." He gave a thumbs up to show his appreciation. This made the cheerful Deng Yang shy. He scratched his head and said, "You flatter me. I'm not as good as you, senior brother Lu." He was always nervous in front of his idol. Lu Cheng shook his head and laughed. He turned to Mu Jinyan, Wang Dali, and the others and said, "Don't be affected by this. Although there is a probability of reaching the dance stage, this is only relative to the overall sample. A small number of people or a small group of people are not affected by this restriction. It's not that you have no hope just because Deng Yang and He Zi broke through. Look at Daxing Temple and Ice God Sect. Dare to dream. What if? Yes." After everyone responded seriously, Little Ming laughed and scolded, "Cheng, why are you talking like an old leader who came back for an inspection? Are you going to say, this is the place where I fought and lived? It has a good tradition. I hope everyone can show that they can bear hardships and fight well. Talker, I think it's a pity that you don't want to be a crosstalk artist." Lu Cheng was used to teasing him. Kai Zongming had decided to go back to his hometown and take over his father's company after graduation. When the time came, he would consider liquidating the company and changing careers. Because his body was still weak, Lu Cheng didn't stay for long. He and Kai Zongming found a quiet and secluded place to drink tea and chat until the evening. La 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 la, Yan Shaoling paced back and forth in the room, her excitement written all over her face. She picked up her phone and browsed the forum. Suddenly, she saw a link from "All the Good Names Are Taken by Dogs." The title came into view and flashed by. Yan Shaoling suddenly frowned and clicked on the content. The reporter wrote, "According to sources close to Lu Cheng, the former Heavenly Son will recover in 3 or 4 months and step into the ring again. You are the past, your whole family is the past." Yan Shaoling cursed inwardly and continued reading. According to the feedback from the Martial Artist Association, Lu Cheng hasn't signed a professional contract with any forces, including Longhu. In other words, he's a free fighter, with the strength, realm, and potential that he has shown in the past. Although it will take 3 or 4 months for him to fully recover, there will definitely be no shortage of pursuers. The various forces should have waived their checkbooks and tried to recruit him. Unfortunately, we did not see that. Does this mean something? Could it be that in the eyes of the major forces, Lu Cheng is a risky investment and no longer possesses such terrifying potential? That's right. A high-ranked dance stage fighter is definitely an honored guest of various forces. However, in the eyes of the teams participating in the top professional competitions, their value is just so. Do they lack in humans? Not lacking. They are only lacking future experts with the potential to break through to the physical invulnerability stage. Lu Cheng's cold reception might reflect something. After reading the report, Yan Xiaoling's mouth gradually turned into an O shape. She vaguely guessed that the source of the reporter's information was her post. However, she never thought that a simple sentence of hers could generate so many things. It's a waste of talent if you don't write novels. Puffing up her cheeks, Yan Shaoling quickly scrolled through the comments and reposts. a serious injury that took an entire year to recover. How can it be possible without leaving behind some problems and losing some of his potential? How depressing. It's so depressing to think that a heavenly son of the era who braved the wind and waves has become an old inhuman who failed time and time again. This tells us that life is full of surprises and that we should enjoy ourselves while we can. To the girl above, do you want to meet me? Seriously. Does Lu Qing need your sympathy? He is an inhuman mighty one. Even if he can't break through to the physical invulnerability stage, his future life will definitely be better than yours by 100 or 1,000 times. To be honest, if Lu Qing isn't so focused on the top professional competitions, he can choose any second-tier team he wants. Poison Milk Hierarch, what do you think? The profile picture of Poison Milk Hierarch was a shiny round head. He reposted twice in a row. What can I think? I haven't seen Lu Qing and I haven't gotten any reliable information. What can I think? Do I look like the kind of person who would make wild guesses without any evidence? However, I think of the past. There aren't many cases of martial arts geniuses breaking their wings halfway through, but it's definitely not rare either. Most of them can only muddle along in lower-tier competitions and slowly fade into the crowd. Phew, I'm a little relieved to hear that. Yan Xiaoling swiped with her thumb and read more comments. Lu Qing is pretty popular. Many of my friends like him. Even if he were to fight in second-tier professional competitions, I think he would still be able to make the headlines frequently and not fade into the crowd. Previous poster, you're wrong. There are only two kinds of martial arts fans like. One is a famous physical invulnerability mighty one, and the other is a genius with extraordinary potential who can break through to the physical invulnerability stage in the future. If Lu Qing were to remain at the inhuman stage for a decade or so, how many people would continue to like him? Every year, there are new, talented, and even good-looking, little fresh meat. Who would waste their energy on a has-been heavenly son? Let's not talk about a decade later. Just look at how quiet Lu Qing's fan forum is now after that Weibo post. How many people are still following him? A martial artist with no hope is like an ice cream dropped on the ground. Who would bend down and lick it? Sigh, you're right. This world is just that cruel. Of course not. Yan Xiaoling muttered silently and switched back to the forum. Howling into the sky expression, ah. That despicable reporter, what's his name? I'll remember you. I must do something. She felt that her little chest was about to explode. In the past, she had seen news that slandered or made up stories about Lu Qing. Although she was very angry, it was never as bad as this, because the source of the news was her post. Little Changya, calm down, calm down. Here, there's a kitchen knife. Brahman didn't understand the situation at first, but she didn't mind watching the show. Little Changya, Nye Chi Chi, said thoughtfully, you're in Moshang, right? I'm here too. Why don't we meet up and discuss what to do? I'm going to kill that reporter. Yan Xiaoling was still in her own world. Sister Chi Chi, do you want to meet up? Count me in. Count me in. I'm very close. I'm in my first year of high school. I can apply to watch the nationals. Brahman chimed in excitedly. What are you talking about? Yan Xiaoling was at a loss. After scrolling up and down, she said, me too. Then let's ask the others. Lu Qing is about to enter the arena again. We have to do something. Nye Chi Chi said with uncertainty. Roar. Yan Xiaoling immediately at the Unparalleled Dragon King, Wanton Seller, Naive Innocence, and the others. Brahman went to a few groups that had become quiet and asked repeatedly, Lu Qing is coming back. Lu Qing is coming back soon. Is there anyone who wants to discuss what to do in the forum? If not, I'll ask again later. For a moment, they, who were still active, were full of enthusiasm and rejuvenated 100 times. Back at the halfway point of Yanbing Mountain, Lu Qing also saw the news. He even received a lot of detailed messages asking about his recent situation. All of them replied with, "Better than expected, recovering." Shaking his head, he exited the news. After half a year of torment, he was already able to face such groundless descriptions with a better attitude. Except for the first sentence, the whole news was filled with imagination and, I think. Even if he retorted, he wouldn't know where to start. If he was really full of flaws, then there would be no flaws. Moreover, the question of whether or not one had potential was not something that could be said with words. Arguing with a reporter in his field of expertise could turn white into black. At present, the only and best way to fight back was to find a way to make the great leap and become a mighty one with physical invulnerability. At that time, it would be the most powerful slap in the face. "I'll work hard for my little fairy and for myself." Lu Qing put down his phone complacently. At this moment, he received a message from Kai Zongming. Talker asked, "Are you coming to watch our match the day after tomorrow?" "Of course, I've already got a guest ticket," replied Lu Qing with a smile. In the hotel, Yan Xiaoling and the rest cheered excitedly behind and beside Kai Zongming. 2 days later, at 7:30 p.m., Xiling Martial Arts Stadium. Lu Qing entered through the guest entrance and walked along the passageway to find his seat. He didn't wear black-rimmed glasses or disguise himself. He appeared in front of everyone in his original appearance. This was the first time he appeared in public since his injury in August last year. He felt that he couldn't hide the fact that he had gotten a guest ticket from the reporters. Disguising himself would also be useless, and it would also expose his usual outfit. His face was pale and his footsteps were a little shaky. Along the way, Lu Qing received many looks of sympathy, pity, lamentation, and regret. He also received many looks of schadenfreude and those who didn't mind watching a show. After climbing mountains and wading through rivers, he finally sat down. He didn't care about the others and cast his gaze on the arena and the big screen. He watched the replays of yesterday's match, the introductions of today's team, and the advertisements. At 7:40 p.m., Lu Qing saw from the corner of his eyes that 2 people who looked like reporters were trying to approach. When he was about to order the security personnel to separate them, he suddenly saw the image on the big screen change and he appeared. That was the young and inexperienced version of himself when he stepped onto the arena. That was at the beginning of the Little Martial Sage Challenge tournament. Huh? What's going on? Lu Qing stared blankly at the screen, only to see the images constantly changing. It showed him fighting against Invincible Punch, being defeated by Iron Palm, winning against the former professional 9th Pin, Road to the Arena, and defeating Yi Yaoting with a terrifying outburst. Some were photos, some were clips, and all of them replayed the beginning of his martial arts. Next, Lu Qing saw himself defeating Yimo and putting his finger to his mouth. He saw himself losing to Zhou Jinquan. He saw himself defeating strong opponents to win the provincial youth tournament. He saw himself when he first met Peng Liyun. He saw himself when he tied with Ren Li. He saw himself when he finally defeated the Big Devil and lifted the Fate Yin Cup. He saw himself when he fought against the Inhumans during the King of 4 Nations competition. This continued until he defeated the monk of Daxing Temple in the Battle of the Kings. From youth to vigor, from frivolity to maturity, all of his martial arts experiences were shown in Lu Qing's eyes. It also confused the reporters and the audience. At this time, the video came to an end. Some people appeared alone, some in groups. Some were Yan Xiaoling and Little Wonton, some were men and women he didn't recognize. Their backgrounds were different from each other, and their appearances were unique from all over the world. They appeared separately and shrank into a small frame, side by side. Finally, on the screen, hundreds and thousands of people shouted in unison, shaking the whole arena. Lu Qing. As the reporters trembled, the opposite stands also burst into a shout, Lu Qing. Lu Qing looked over subconsciously. Then he saw Yan Xiaoling, Brahmin with 2 ponytails, and many familiar yet strange faces. A huge banner was held up by them, on which the words were clearly written, "You are here, we are here." End of main part. Chapter 584. Early June, Connecticut City, somewhere in the Holy Top Church. At the front of the church was a towering cross. The seats on both sides extended all the way to the door. Almost all the seats were filled with believers. The dome in the sky was grand and spacious. The walls and windows were narrow and colorful. Rays of sunlight seeped in, bringing a sense of solemnity. A bishop was holding a scripture in his hand. He was preaching slowly in a grand and dignified voice, guiding the lambs closer to the light of heaven. The whole scene was sacred and extraordinary. It made people forget their daily troubles and obtain spiritual sustenance. At this moment, Lu Cheng, wearing a white t-shirt, casual pants, and sneakers, walked in from the door. He put his hands in his pockets and took a few steps forward. He looked around and found an empty seat at the back. He didn't clasp his hands or lower his head like the believers present. Instead, he closed his eyes and leisurely used his ears, spirit, and soul to sense everything around him. Because of the discussions on the internet, he became a hot topic again. He didn't dare to stay long in Shushan. A few days later, he flew to Connecticut City. After more than a month of rest, he had recovered most of his strength. The reason he came to the Holy Top Church to observe the ceremony was not because he wanted to convert to God. For a martial artist like him who had a firm will and knew what he wanted and what he was fighting for, faith was faith. He would never rely on an illusory God for the peace of his heart and the path of his future. During this period of time, Lu Cheng had been here to observe and comprehend. According to Geezer Shur, all training methods would lead to the same destination in the end. Lu Cheng felt that the next step of combining martial arts and cultivation, which was also the important step of advancing to physical invulnerability, might be to focus on the word sameness. Because of this, he decided to broaden the scope of his study and not limit it to cultivation and martial arts. Through the church rituals and martial arts sects, he could find the common ground, the meaning of the word sameness, and the essence of improving himself. From there, he could gain a strategic advantage. Lu Cheng closed his eyes and listened carefully. His will was 3 feet above his head. In a state of concentration and detachment, he read the changes in the ritual environment and the spiritual stability of the believers. After a while, the choir began to sing in a neat, holy, and lofty way. With the help of the special design of the chapel, the audience seemed to be immersed in the baptism of the holy light. The hesitation and anxiety in their hearts were swept away. In a short time, they seemed to have been reborn. Lu Cheng slowly opened his eyes and saw that some of the believers were already in tears. He could vaguely see milky white light rippling in the chapel, but it also seemed like an illusion. This feeling. He watched, listened, and experienced thoughtfully. He had some ideas, but he couldn't grasp the essence of it, let alone find any similarities. In a similar atmosphere, the ceremony came to an end. Lu Cheng didn't stay any longer. He stood up, put his hands in his pockets, and walked slowly to the door. A man sitting in the front row of the church happened to put down his hands and looked around as if he had sensed something. He glanced around and saw the back of the person at the door. Huh! The golden-haired, blue-eyed youth suddenly cried out in confusion. What's wrong, Oblak? The black-haired youth beside him asked in confusion. Oblak frowned and replied, that person just now looked familiar. However, he couldn't recall who it was because he could only see the back of the person. There's no one here. The black-haired youth looked back and saw no one by the open door. Forget it. It's nothing important. Oblak shook his head and stood up. I have to go back and prepare for tonight's match. He and the black-haired youth, Charles, came from Europe's Brut Ale, a branch of the Mission sect. They were currently escorting the Holy Grail on an exhibition tour in America and sparring with local grandmasters of martial arts. As one of the Mission sect's main strongholds on this side of the ocean, Connecticut's activities had been upgraded to a small-scale competition to determine the strongest person below the crown. The Mission sect believed that the human body had 10 primordial essences in different positions, corresponding to different symbols. When all of them were condensed, a tree of life would grow, and reached the ultimate crown, which was equivalent to the physical invulnerability of China. Although the crown was known as the ultimate, in the context of the church, it was only the ultimate of mortals. When the 3 crowns were worn, one would be able to lift the curtain of shadows and see the God of concealment and become a true archangel. Oblak had made a name for himself at a young age and was brimming with talent. Due to the setback and provocation in China, he had given up on his arrogance and impetuousness. As a result, he had condensed all 10 primordial essences faster than expected. He was only half a step away from growing the tree of life and 1 step away from attaining the crown. In this competition, he had been victorious and was about to enter the finals. Late at night, in a villa. In the center of the living room on the first floor, there was an altar with strange symbols drawn on it. On the surrounding chairs, sofas, dining tables, and even the carpet, there were naked men and women in the midst of intense intercourse. Some were one-on-one, some were one-on-many, and some were even one-on-many. Their expressions were intoxicated and full of joy, as if they had obtained the ultimate release. At the railing on the second floor, Lu Qing stood quietly with a paper cup in his hand. There was fruit juice in the cup. His desire rose as he watched. His mouth was dry as he drank the cold drink. He tried his best to restrain his thoughts as he sketched out the confrontation formula stroke by stroke, clearing his mind and body. Seizing this opportunity, he activated his kung fu and froze water into ice, turning the lake into a mirror, and making a deity appear 3 feet above his head. Looking at the scene below, Lu Qing had already shed his lust and impulsiveness. His eyes were dark and deep again as he observed calmly from the side with an aloof attitude. This bunch of spirit cultivators sure know how to play. He chuckled to himself. This was a spirit cultivator sect that had developed properly. In other words, they obtained members through their own preaching. They didn't need to use drugs, bewitchment, or abduction to trick innocent men and women into joining them. Therefore, he had no intention of being chivalrous. Moans entered his ears as the sea of flesh churned. Lu Qing gently swirled the paper cup in his hand as he observed quietly and harmlessly. He gradually gained some understanding of such a scene and such cultivation. To put it simply, this is a method to break the fixed pattern. He nodded slightly and sipped his fruit juice. Since birth, everyone is bound by various rules and requirements. Once these are broken, one's body and mind will be liberated, relaxed, happy, and stimulated. Combined with one's lust, it's equivalent to the Buddhist tantric enlightenment of lust and emptiness. It doesn't seek lust, but to break one's obsession, break one's shackles, and break the original pattern of one's body and mind. In the process, if you indulge in lust, indulge in such indulgence, and indulge in the feeling of emptiness and relief after the matter is over, you will be on the wrong path. You will jump from one fixed pattern to another, forming new obsessions and new restraints. The spirit cultivator's method of seeking self-spirit is similar to that of Tantric Buddhism. Both are extreme and easy to fall into the devil's path. This is a ritual to enhance one's self-spirit. For a spirit cultivator to enter the physical invulnerability stage, one's self-spirit is closely related to one's self-spirit. What is the similarity between it and the church, the sects that focus on combat, cultivation, and martial arts? Lu Qing, who had recently read many classics, pondered seriously. After a long time, he took the paper cup and silently disappeared from the second floor. When the ritual was over, the host spirit cultivator returned to the second floor. He planned to seize the opportunity to see his self-spirit and raise it while his body and mind were in a relaxed and liberated state. At this moment, he looked at the study in confusion. The window was wide open, and the night wind blew in, filling the empty space. I forgot to close the window. The spirit cultivator was confused. A car sped through the empty streets at night. Smith looked ahead and asked, puzzled, Lu, why would you want to watch a devil's ritual? Lu Qing pressed his lips with his right hand and casually made up a story. Devils have their own logic. Only by understanding them can we defeat them. You've become more and more mysterious recently. Smith shook his head and sighed. He was a Puritan passed down from his ancestors, and hated the activities of spirit cultivators. Without further ado, Smith asked, "There are 2 more places. Where to first?" Lu Qing thought for a moment and laughed self-deprecatingly. "Let's call it a night. Send me back." "What a strange guy," Smith criticized silently. He turned the steering wheel and turned into the road to the North District. The next morning, Lu Qing finished his training. Wiping his sweat, he walked back to the house and happened to see Yan Zhika coming down from the 2nd floor with light steps. "Cool, have you felt any obvious nourishment in your body recently?" He beat her to it and asked the question that he would ask every 3 to 5 days. Yan Zhika was wearing a t-shirt that exposed her delicate collarbone. She rolled her eyes and said, "It's fine. Ever since I collected the 9 words formula, my spirit has been improving rapidly. The effect of nourishing my body is also getting better." As she spoke, she walked down the stairs and said with her dimples, "I feel like it won't be long before I can nourish my body, understand, withdraw, achieve Dan equilibrium, and strengthen your foundation of blending cultivation and martial arts. Isn't that awesome?" As expected of Coach Yen, Lu Qing gave her a thumbs up and praised her with a bright smile. When he first completed the cultivation and collected the 9 words formula, he purely wanted to help make up for her congenital deficiency. Who would have thought that it would actually help him open up his own path? If he wanted to rely on George and the others to achieve Dan equilibrium, who knows how long it would take? And the effect of practicing the 9 words formula was also very good. His spirit had improved a lot. Recently, he even felt like a charlatan. Yan Zhika pursed her lips and said proudly, "But the improved spirit has been used to nourish my body. My current state is about the same as last year. I can't stay up too late." At this point, she covered her mouth with her hand and yawned cutely. Then, her face turned red and her expression turned fierce. She lifted her leg and kicked Lu Cheng's shin. Although it was quick and swift, she didn't use much strength. Therefore, Lu Cheng could only smile in response. After breakfast, he sent his wife to Connecticut University. After leaving Aunt Du to protect her, Lu Cheng went to the martial arts club and then to the Holy Top Church to continue his observation and comprehension. Chapter 585. Holy Top Church, in a small worship room. There was no choir or fancy decorations, only a dozen or so believers praying with their eyes closed. Lu Cheng didn't say a word after he entered. He found a random corner and sat down, seriously experiencing the different sensations in the air. Tranquility, quietness, calmness, and relaxation drifted over, making him feel as though he was using the confrontation formula. Not a single clergyman or grand master of martial arts of the church. The church and the spirit cultivators place great emphasis on the creation and influence of the atmosphere. Lu Cheng sized up the room leisurely and had an idea. He didn't want to disturb them, so he got up quietly and walked out of the room. He glanced at his phone that was on silent mode. Seeing that there was still some time before Yan Zhika's class ended, he decided to take the opportunity to visit the Holy Grail exhibition in the church museum next door, which had recently become popular in Connecticut. It was said that this was a silver cup that once contained the blood of the Savior. According to his master, the original forms of the famous deities and gods in history were often mighty ones of physical invulnerability. There were even some who had stepped into the forbidden zone. I wonder what level the Savior belonged to. Cuckoo was very interested in this matter as well. She planned to visit on the weekend, partly to broaden her horizons and partly for a date. I'll just take it as an opportunity to get a feel for it." Lu Cheng put his hands in his trouser pockets and walked casually to the entrance of the church museum. As soon as he entered, he was stopped by a pretty blonde lady with a clean temperament. She smiled gently and said, "Hello, my name is Tracy." "Hello, my name is Trish. I'm a volunteer guide here. What can I do for you?" "A volunteer for the church." Lu Cheng had been here many times recently and was no stranger to this. He waved his hand and smiled. "It's fine, I'm just looking around." Volunteers like this are all people who inculcate words like God, salvation, and beauty. I can understand their thoughts and feelings, but I'm sorry, I really don't like it. Compared to this, I'd rather listen to Little Ming's crosstalk. The objects on display here are all related to the history of the church. It's hard to understand their true charm just by looking at them. The blonde lady, Tracy, didn't seem disappointed at being rejected. Her smile remained unchanged as she emphasized. That works too. Lu Qing thought for a few seconds and changed his mind. This wasn't because the other party was a beautiful girl, but because he thought of a problem. After listening to her explanation, he had a plan in mind and memorized the key points. When he went on a date with his little fairy later, he would be able to show off his knowledgeable side. Wasn't this the meaning of scouting? All right, sir, please. It's best if you look from exhibition hall number 1. This is the history of the spread of the Lord's gospel, and also the history of the development of our church. Trish pointed to the far left and smiled sweetly. Lu Cheng was indifferent. He followed the volunteer guide and casually stepped into exhibition area number 1. There were bulletproof glass display windows on both sides, inside which were various antique objects. These are the notes left behind by Saint Simon. Before the scroll of the Dead Sea was unearthed, it was the earliest document that recorded the gospel. Trish pointed at the model papyrus and said. Lu Qing nodded with great interest, earnestly memorizing the contents of the explanation. After taking a few steps and looking around, Trish's expression suddenly turned solemn. Her voice was filled with grief. She pointed to a single cabinet in the center of exhibition hall number 1 and said, "The Savior shed his blood for mankind. This is the ancient cup that once held the holy blood." Lu Qing followed her gaze and saw a few security personnel with restrained auras and shocking vitality standing at the four corners of the cabinet. They didn't move an inch. A domineering, dazzling, and superior aura came from nearby and enveloped the area. In the glass display window, there was a silver cup sitting quietly. Its pattern was simple and unadorned, and there were no traces of oxidation on its entire body. The inside of the cup was stained with a faint layer of blood. Even after 2,000 years, it still had traces of moisture. It was fresh and slow, as if it was nurturing something. The Savior's blood. Lu Qing leaned closer and observed intently. He felt that the atmosphere around him had somehow turned sad and gloomy. The color of blood rippled continuously, as though it was filling the cup, but there was nothing in it. This thing is still somewhat miraculous. Amidst his thoughts, Lu Cheng's heart suddenly stirred. He smelled an oppressive and dangerous scent. Ever since he shattered his Jindan and fused a part of it, although he didn't have his greatest reliance, the supernatural abilities he mutated had received the strongest enhancement under his current limits. This included ice and fire, as well as his intuition to foresee danger. This was still a distance away from the legendary realm of cicada senses before the autumn wind blows, but compared to the past, it was no longer a small matter. At this moment, Lu Qing felt like he was in an environment before a storm. Although he didn't see it with his own eyes, he could acutely sense various signs. A gentleman doesn't stand under a collapsing wall. Leave immediately. He made a prompt decision, turned around and left, leaving the dumbfounded blonde Trish behind. Sir, wait a minute. Did I make a mistake in my explanation? Trish chased after him and asked in puzzlement. I just remembered that I have something urgent to do, Lu Qing replied perfunctorily. After pausing for a moment, he continued, I have a few friends coming over soon. Can you help explain? Can I trouble you to wait in the lounge and not do anything else for the time being? Trish nodded happily. Sure, no problem. Lu Qing didn't linger. With his hands by his side, he strode back to the door, brushing past the blonde, blue-eyed youth who had come to take over his shift. Oblak glanced at him and entered the exhibition hall without much thought. His mind was filled with the finals that night. After a few steps, he suddenly paused and whipped his head around to look at the Chinese man he had just met. Lu Qing. Lu Cheng. The Chinese heavenly son of China who made him taste the most bitter defeat of his life. Wasn't he heavily injured and half retired from the professional scene? Why is he here? The one I met at the chapel yesterday and found familiar is him too. In the midst of his thoughts, Oblak forgot his duty and instinctively turned around to chase after the figure that was about to disappear from his sight. His footsteps were accompanied by the faint sound of metal clashing against metal. After returning to Brute Ale from Gao Fen, he had been paying attention to Chinese martial arts news. He finally found out who had defeated him and that he was a heavenly son of China who had received a lot of attention. That was why he walked out of his self-denial and had a goal. After a few years of hard work, he felt that he had the strength to challenge Lu Cheng again. Who knew that Lu Cheng would meet with an accident and fall from grace? Now that he had met him in Connecticut, he couldn't miss this opportunity. Thump, thump, thump. Oblak weaved through the men and women on the streets with heavy footsteps, quickly closing in on the figure he had been thinking about all this time. However, Lu Cheng's footsteps were just as fast. He couldn't close the distance. Anxious, Oblak's arms, legs, chest, abdomen, and other parts of his body lit up with dazzling stars. They connected together and seemed to be forming a tree-like object. With a burst of dazzling light, he became the true son of Sunday. A terrifying aura enveloped Lu Cheng from a distance. It was both a greeting and a hindrance. But at that moment, he felt the area around the aura become empty. It was like the darkness of the universe that could never be filled. In just an instant, the surging holy light disappeared without a trace. This. Oblak paused in surprise, his eyes filled with astonishment. In that short pause, Lu Cheng had turned into another street and disappeared from his sight. Oblak was about to give chase when he suddenly heard a loud explosion. He felt the ground beneath his feet tremble powerlessly. He turned back and saw the glass windows of the church museum and the cathedral of holy light shatter. Milky white light and crimson flames burst through the dome. Screams and cries rang out one after another. Something's wrong. Oblak threw the matter of Lu Cheng to the back of his mind and sprinted back to the museum. As soon as he entered, he saw half of the glass windows shattered. The floor was littered with injured, moaning lecturers and visitors. It was a mess. As he approached the raging flames, he found his good friends, Johnny and Charles. One of them was lying there with wounds all over his body. He was unconscious and his life was quickly draining away. One of them had his arm blown off. He groaned in pain as he tried to stand up, but he was powerless. Oblak's pupils shrank. He didn't have time to help his companions and ran straight for the Holy Grail. The closer he got, the more tragic the scene became. When he reached the warped independent display case, he saw his teacher, Mason Walker, the leader of the Brute Tar Holy Grail Knights. This middle-aged man with eyes as blue as the ocean was leaning against the display case. His chest was sunken and mostly charred. He was spitting out crimson blood. The silver cup that once held the Savior's blood was nowhere to be seen. Three of the crown level. Mason Walker took a deep breath and let his words flow smoothly. Quick, go to the confession room and find the Archbishop. Tell him to inform the Connecticut government to send out all the crown-level mighty ones and seal off the roads out of the city. With the help of satellite detection and positioning, we need to find the Holy Grail as soon as possible. Okay. Oblak nodded vigorously. Without asking any more questions, he turned and ran in the direction of the Holy Top Church. He now understood why the robbery of the Holy Grail happened at this time. Usually, the two crown-level mighty ones from the Brute Tar delegation would take turns guarding the Holy Grail. Together with the Archbishop Konsev in the church next door, they could hold off the attackers until help arrived. But every day at this time was the Archbishop's fixed confession time. He would cut off his senses and listen wholeheartedly to the teachings of God. When he passed by the museum's lounge, he saw a blonde girl sitting there in a daze from the corner of his eye. She seemed to be in great shock. Lu Cheng didn't care what happened. He ran straight back to the campus of Connecticut University and to Yen Jika's classroom. Seeing that everything was fine, He heaved a sigh of relief. He took out his phone and browsed the news. Breaking news came in one after another. Museum attacked, Holy Grail stolen. 3 terror-level super criminals. So that's what happened. Lu Qing finished browsing and refreshed the page again. He saw the latest breaking news. The deliveryman suspected to be among the attackers. F***CK. Lu Qing was stunned at first and then blurted out. P.S. The religions involved in this article are fictional and have nothing to do with reality. I just saw a student talking about the Kabbalah tree and the hidden god in the book review section. In the end, I was swallowed by Qitian while I was taking an afternoon nap. Scary, scary. Let's not talk about such issues. Chapter 586. After seeing the words, deliveryman, Lu Qing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He thought, the one who cheats others will be cheated sooner or later. Back then, he was still proud of the fact that there were many imitators of the deliveryman and that he had successfully cleared himself of suspicion. But in the end, such a huge scapegoat fell from the sky. Damn it. Luckily, everyone knows about my damaged potential due to my serious injuries. No one will believe that I can suddenly become a terror grade, which is the equivalent of a physical invulnerability mighty one. I won't take the blame. Lu Qing heaved a long sigh of relief. He turned to seriously pondering the matter. The more he thought about it, the more puzzled he felt. Strange. He muttered, frowning. There were 2 strange points. First, the greatest value of the Holy Grail was that it was stained with a little of the Savior's blood. It was of great symbolic significance and enlightenment to the various branches of the mission sect. For practitioners of other systems, such as martial artists, it could at most be used as a reference to draw parallels. It was an item that was worth losing. As for the research institutions of major countries, they had no lack of similar items rooted in their own country. There was no need for them to get the Holy Grail. Second, the attacker chose to attack at a relatively busy time in the morning. This was indeed the time when the security system was most likely to be negligent. But it was also not a good time for them. It was too eye-catching and obvious. They couldn't kill people calmly, remove the surveillance, erase the traces, and eliminate the influence. They would definitely leave behind many clues. With so many physical invulnerability mighty ones in Connecticut and many with amazing means, they would be in great danger if they couldn't leave the area immediately. And it wasn't easy to escape from Connecticut immediately. No matter how fast a physical invulnerability mighty one could run, they couldn't outrun the speed of radio transmission. In broad daylight, the Connecticut government wouldn't be slow to respond. As long as they mobilized their so-called terror-grade mighty ones to cooperate with the police and the National Guard to seal off the main entrances and exits, check the strength of the passers-by, one by one, and prevent them from taking advantage of the situation. In addition, with satellites and other high-tech equipment monitoring the farmland, lakes, rivers, and other sparsely populated areas, it would be very difficult for them to leave the country without any means of control. In other words, this was a matter that risked many times more than the benefits. That was why the Brute Ale delegation dared to have the real Holy Grail on tour in America. Another purpose? Lu Qing shook his head slightly. He couldn't figure it out no matter how hard he thought about it. The Holy Grail had been in Brutal's possession for hundreds of years, but they had not produced any valuable results. Who would be willing to take the risk for an illusory hope? Since he couldn't figure it out, he couldn't be bothered to think about it. In any case, it had nothing to do with him. Lu Qing lit up the dim screen of his phone and shared the entire story with his little fairy girl, who was still in class. He also informed the military liaison personnel. Incidents involving physical invulnerability experts were worthy of the attention of the country. At this moment, Connecticut had entered the highest state of alert. All departing flights at Orion Airport were postponed, and all departing passengers were rechecked to confirm their strength. On the bridge across the river, police had set up checkpoints to prevent cars from passing by. Below, warships patrolled back and forth, scanning the water with sonar and other devices. On the other side of the river, a white-haired old man with arms thicker than the legs of others was sitting in the back of a nanny van. He was resting with his eyes closed in case of an emergency. He was none other than the grand elder of the Jaruga sect, Stefan. The sparkling lake swayed. Ships from the naval base spread out, using all kinds of high-tech equipment to complete the blockade. On the deck of their flagship, a brown-haired middle-aged man in a general's uniform crossed his arms and looked coldly in the direction of Connecticut. The ripples around him stopped, sparkling. Satellites outside the atmosphere were closely monitoring the places where the city was connected to the farms, the wilderness, and so on. Once a person appeared, they would immediately report and track him. Other than that, there were other arrangements. Because of the existence of powerful humans, the development of technology had always been in the direction of restricting them. In the church museum with broken windows and a dome that exposed the sky, Archbishop Kontsev, who was obviously of Latin descent, stood in front of a warped display case. He sighed. The Lord often teaches us not to overlook today's misfortune because of yesterday's good fortune. We have been careless because nothing has happened before. Yes. Another, crown-level, strongman from the Brute Ale delegation, Townsend, drew a cross in front of his chest in sincere repentance. Normally, when the Archbishop was confessing, he should have been with Mason Walker. But after so many days of smooth sailing, everyone felt that everything was normal and that there would be no accidents, so he was lazy. O'Block stood quietly by the side, waiting for the notification from the Connecticut Command Center. At this moment, he felt something and turned his head to look at the entrance of Exhibition Hall No. 1. He saw 3 men in black robes slowly approaching. The leader was tall, with indiscernible wrinkles on his forehead, eyes, and cheeks. His hair and eyes were pale white. O'Block glanced at him and felt that he was very close, very noble, and very trustworthy. On the left side of the old man was a man with emerald eyes and an illusory aura. He had a scholarly air about him. He was the light mentor of the spiritualist order, Lucas. Could that be the world-famous grand mentor of the spiritualist order, Cisco? After making eye contact with Kantsev, the old man smiled and said, "I'm here to meet the spirit of this place." There was no ripple in Kantsev's eyes. He humbly drew a cross and said, "May the Lord bless you." "What a vicious curse," said the old man with a smile. "Wherever they go, they leave traces. I believe that the 3 attackers will be caught. This is a challenge to the order of society. This is a challenge to the stability of America and Connecticut. The Holy Grail contains the blood of the Savior. It is closely related to us." Kantsev looked deeply into his eyes and said calmly, "It can be fooled for a while, but it won't be fooled forever. 2 days, 2 days at most. Cisco, I hope this will help you." The grand mentor of the spiritualist order, Cisco nodded slightly and said no more. He focused on channeling to track down the culprits. In the bedroom on the 2nd floor, Yenjika, who was studying for her final exams, looked up and discussed the Holy Grail incident with Lu Cheng, who was leisurely playing with his phone. At the end of the conversation, she gently thumped the table and sighed. "What a pity. I haven't even seen what the Holy Grail looks like." Due to their beliefs, the Holy Grail couldn't be photographed during the exhibition. They couldn't view it online unless they went to see it live. It looks very ordinary. Lu Cheng excitedly took a pen and paper and drew for Yenjika. After a few strokes, he handed it to her as if he was presenting a treasure. "That's it." Yenjika glanced at it and immediately pursed her pink lips to prevent herself from laughing out loud. After holding it in for a dozen seconds, she nodded solemnly. "Cheng, your drawing skills. Your calligraphy is better than your drawing." "My calligraphy is bad enough." Lu Cheng shook his head in amusement. "I don't accept such compliments." Just as he finished speaking, he suddenly felt a throbbing sensation. He stood up with a thoughtful expression. "What's wrong?" Yenjika blinked her clear eyes. "We have guests," replied Lu Cheng with a smile as he slowly walked to the door. After a few steps, he turned back and said to the girl, let's go down together. It's safer to be close to each other in case any accidents happen. Okay. Yan Zhika nodded obediently and reached out to hold Lu Cheng's left hand. When the couple reached the first floor, the girl and Aunt Du sat on the sofa in the living room while Lu Cheng walked to the door and pulled it open. The door creaked open. Block, who was about to press the doorbell, froze. Excuse me, is there anything I can help you with? Lu Cheng already knew what was going on. Beside Block, the white-haired, blue-eyed grand teacher looked over with a smile and spoke warmly. Just a routine investigation. In that instant, Lu Cheng felt an incomparable closeness and respect for the grand teacher. He wanted nothing more than to prostrate himself on the ground and confess his thoughts and repent of his past mistakes. With a change of thought, he outlined the confrontation formula and calmed his body and mind, dispelling the emotions that weren't considered negative. If only I knew, replied Lu Cheng with a smile. His gaze was calm and his expression was leisurely. To the grand teacher, he was like an ordinary auntie in the neighborhood committee. Completely unaffected. Block was taken aback. Cisco asked calmly, "You've been going to the Holy Top Church a lot recently." "Why?" "To find ways to calm my mind," answered Lu Cheng truthfully. Lu Cheng answered half truthfully and half jokingly. He then casually explained, "You should know that I've suffered a lot of serious setbacks this year." He was indeed looking for ways to break through to the physical invulnerability stage. Once he reached the physical invulnerability stage, his mind would undoubtedly find peace. Yeah, that's right. Lu Cheng wasn't disappointed or pessimistic. When he talked about the terrifying setbacks that had almost forced him out of the professional circle, he spoke as if he was an observer. Not only was Block surprised, but even the grand teacher's eyes flickered. In this aspect, us spirit practitioners might be more useful than churches, said Cisco casually. So, why did you go to the museum to see the Holy Grail today? Cisco asked casually before asking, why did you go to the museum to see the Holy Grail? Out of curiosity. For reference. I was supposed to go with my girlfriend on the weekend, but I happened to be free in the morning, so I decided to take a look in advance to prepare for our date, said Lu Cheng frankly. The grand teacher paused for a few seconds. His eyes flashed and he said in a low voice, "You left suddenly before the attack. Did you know something beforehand?" Lu Cheng smiled with a heart as cold as ice. According to my data, I have 3 superpowers. One of them is the ability to foresee danger. Because I didn't know what kind of danger it was, I could only leave first and warn you later. This may seem selfish, but I don't think it's a crime, right? Cisco nodded slowly and asked for confirmation. In other words, before the crown level Mason Walker discovered the danger, you already predicted it? Block subconsciously held his breath as soon as the words left his mouth. Lu Cheng nodded calmly. You could say that. P.S. Hey, I'll update in advance for you guys today. Looking for monthly votes. Chapter 587. You can say that. As the disciple of the crown level, Mighty One, Mason Walker, Block felt humiliated by Lu Cheng's reply. However, when he looked up, he saw that Lu Cheng was neither arrogant nor boastful. Lu Cheng was describing the menu calmly, as though he was describing what was on the menu tonight. This wasn't boasting or bragging. It was the truth. Block took a deep breath and told himself that blacksmiths were good at forging, tailors were good at making clothes, and everyone had their own unique strengths. A king wasn't better than a commoner in every aspect. After quietly listening to Lu Cheng's reply, Grand Teacher Cisco smiled. I understand. After that, he nodded and left the door at an unhurried pace. Block was in charge of the aftermath. With a solemn expression, he said to Lu Cheng, "That's all for questioning. Thank you for your cooperation. If necessary, we will visit again." Since the grand teacher didn't say anything, it meant that Lu Cheng wasn't lying. Okay. Lu Cheng nodded casually. Block stared at him deeply. Without another word, he turned around and chased after Cisco. Originally, he wanted to take this opportunity to bring up the matter of a challenge. However, the first reason was that the Holy Grail had been stolen, which was a serious matter. As a member of the Order of Knights, he couldn't just think about his personal matters and ignore the bigger picture. The second reason was that he suddenly felt uncertain in his heart, as if he had lost his confidence. That was why he didn't say anything even though he wanted to. Although Lu Qing isn't at the crown level, he's still at the same level as me. However, he's a level higher than me. He has a sense of transcendence. O'Block's face darkened as he entered the car. After watching them leave, Lu Qing closed the door and returned to the living room. Yenjika stood up and leaned over. She mimicked Lu Cheng's tone and said, "You can say that. Cheng, you're really awesome. Why do I feel like you're mocking me?" Lu Cheng looked at Ku, amused. That guy just now was O'Block, the one who came to Gaofen before. I saw in his eyes that he wasn't convinced and wanted to fight me again. I had no choice but to put on a show to scare him away. Otherwise, with only 70 to 80% of my strength, I might not be his match. Skill, bluff. Yenjika rolled her eyes. You still remember who he is? Of course. Those were the days when we traveled freely. I'll never forget it. Lu Qing laughed. The moment I saw the Brute Ale delegation, I remembered him. I was chased around the streets by him this morning. Yenjika pursed her lips and turned her head. She smiled and said, I remember him too. At this time, Aunt Du returned to her own room and left the place to the young couple. Yenjika looked around. She looked at Lu Qing. The meaning behind his words was self-evident. I'll go check what's in the fridge and freezer. Lu Qing lowered his head and smiled. As he walked towards the kitchen, he thought, there are still some dumplings and noodles left from yesterday. Should I make dumpling noodles? What are you doing here? Lu Qing took off his apron and put it on. You're making supper for your wife. I'm going to make supper for my darling. Yenjika chuckled. You're such a glutton. You want to steal my food every time. Well, I think my egg fried rice is as good as yours. How about a bowl of egg fried rice? A big bowl. Lu Qing answered with a big smile in his eyes. Just like that, the couple kept each other busy. They exchanged a few words from time to time. Cheng, are you going back to Songqing soon? Yenjika asked as she cracked the eggs. Yes, I have to go back and get the certificate. I even skipped the oral examination, so I can't skip this. Besides, there's another thing that needs to be settled, you know. Lu Qing looked at the pot of boiling water and added fuel to the fire. Then I'll go and meet Dirty Tong and the others. Yenjika said happily. She paused for a few seconds and bit her lower lip. Then she said with melancholy, I'm going to start learning from my tutor next semester. I'll be busy. You're going to enter the professional circle again. You'll be busy too. Why don't we go on a trip this summer? We can ask for the Love Lock, the pyramids, and the grassland. What do you think? Although Lu Qing was a little confused by his wife's sudden change of topic, he quickly recovered. He poured the dumplings into the pot and said, Okay, we'll come up with a strategy later. Okay, let's go to Songqing first and then back to Shushan. We'll stay at home until August so that my dad won't be angry. Yenjika thought about the plan while frying the eggs. In the end, she said, Cheng, I've recently found an animal that I like. What animal? Bro Flat Top. Ah. What's that? Honey badger, white hair and silver cape. Its motto is, if you're not in a fight, you're on your way to a fight. Oh, and don't tell me who the enemy is. Tell me how many there are. Tell me the time and place. Sounds interesting. Yeah, and, hey, Ku, it's time for your egg fried rice. I can faintly smell something burning, ouch. After a while, a voice sounded in the restaurant again. Cheng, who are you talking to on WeChat? Smith and me. Spider, what did he say? He asked me why my alert level suddenly changed back to dangerous. He said he's going to monitor me 24/7 again. You kept laughing just now. What did you say? I said because I bragged in front of the great teacher. Pfft, what did he say? He said F***K, haha, who on earth did he learn Chinese from? In the collection room of a luxurious villa, a deep voice was speaking in an excited and intoxicated tone. There are billions of people in the world, and I'm the only one who has evolved such an ability. By absorbing the blood of others, I obtain the corresponding ability. It's the ability of God. This was a thin man wearing a black tuxedo and a dark red cape. His facial features were deep, and his eyes were red. In his hand was an ancient silver cup that seemed to be filled with blood, but it was also empty. Yes, it's so special that they never thought that the people you killed had their eyes cut out from their foreheads. It wasn't a cult ritual, but just a disguise. Your real goal is their blood. It's their special trait. Isn't that right, Nightmare? Opposite the man in the dark red cape was a brown-eyed man drinking champagne. He was in his 30s or 40s and dressed meticulously. The handkerchief in front of his chest pocket was folded into a flower. Yes, thank you for your help, God Slayer. The man in the dark red cape laughed out loud. When I extract the blood of the Savior, absorb it, and digest it, I'll truly enter the terror grade. In the future, I'll replace that old guy from the Samano royal family and become the emperor of the sanguine race. Having said that, he looked to the other side. There stood a man with dark skin and a beard who had features that were very characteristic of the Dead Sea. The man in the dark red cape pressed his right hand to his chest and bowed elegantly. Thank you. Thank you for letting me show the strength of the terror grade at the last minute, confusing many people. Pharaoh thinks highly of you, the bearded man said with a serious expression. The bearded man said with a serious expression, in 2 months, he has a big operation and needs your help. No problem, as long as my absorption goes smoothly. The man in the dark red cape smiled and watched as the bearded man walked to the ancient coffin in the corner. He took off his clothes, wrapped himself in a bandage, and lay inside. He lost all signs of life, turning into a real old mummy. Look, there's no attacker here. There's only the collection of mummies bought by the collector, Mr. Constantine. The man in the dark red cape smiled smugly. He asked the brown-eyed man, God Slayer, why did you agree to cooperate? The God Slayer touched his nose with his index finger and said, maybe, it's more interesting to have one more terror baddie in this world. At this moment, the sound of knocking came from the surveillance system. The man in the dark red cape glanced and said, it's Lucas. After that, he opened the door of the collection room and returned to the living room to let the black-robed, green-eyed spirit cultivator, Lucas, enter. What did the great teacher ask you to do? The man in the dark red cape asked. Lucas looked at him calmly and said, Constantine, the great teacher asked me to tell you that in 2 days, at most 2 days, more than 10 terror-grade masters, a few special forces equipped with man-made weapons and various high-tech equipment, and more special agents who are good at tracking will arrive in Connecticut. The uniqueness of the Holy Grail can't be hidden for long. You have to complete the absorption before this deadline and try not to damage the Holy Grail too much. When the time comes, as long as you return it secretly, the security level will be lowered. If this situation continues, no one can take it. Don't think that you can avoid the road. There are eyes watching from the sky. The more deserted a place is, the more obvious it is. The man in the dark red cape, Constantine, was silent for a moment. He raised the Holy Grail and smiled. Okay. A few days later, Lu Qing keenly sensed from the news that the security level in Connecticut had been lowered. Hence, he sent a message to Smith. The Holy Grail has been found. The 3 terror-grade attackers have been caught. After a while, Smith replied, apparently, the Holy Grail has been found. It's in a trash can. It's a little damaged. We've only confirmed the identity of the assailant, but we haven't found out who it is. Among the assailants are the God Slayer and the Nightmare. In short, this matter has come to an end. Come to an end? Come to an end just like that? Lu Cheng was surprised. Such a serious matter had come to an end just like that? Or was there something brewing under the surface? Before he could ask further, Smith sent a message. Lu, I want to ask you something. Go ahead, Lu Cheng answered generously. Smith was puzzled. I've been practicing according to the awakening and improvement of superpowers but haven't made any progress for more than a year. I'm getting further and further away from the dangerous grade. Lu, do you have any good suggestions? I find you more and more mysterious and hard to guess. Find a few exotic spiders to bite you? Lu Cheng joked. That's not funny at all. Smith replied. Lu Cheng pondered for a moment and said, actually, the improvement of superpowers is related to the strengthening of your self. The better control of your body, the easier it is to go deeper. I suggest you awaken your self-spirit. I'm from the mission. Smith emphasized helplessly. Why does Lu feel so unreliable? Haha, an ascetic from one of the branches of the mission sect can be used as a reference. Lu Cheng stopped teasing. After putting down his phone, he looked out of the window and thought leisurely, the matter of the Holy Grail has come to an end. Ku will be taking her final exams next. After that, she will return to Songcheng and meet up with her master to look for the secret residence of the Longhu Immortal at the bottom of Weishui Lake. P.S. Damn it, Qidian's back-end is drawing. I could have brought it forward. Begging for votes. Chapter 588. At the end of June, the new campus of Songqing University. It feels like I haven't been here for a long time. Yanjika stood on the long bridge, gazing at the Weishui Lake illuminated by street lamps, as well as the lakeside road that she and Lu Cheng had walked on day after day. She felt that every scene and every corner reminded her of a different scene. The past pierced through the gap of 2 years and reappeared vividly in her mind. Lu Cheng also sighed and echoed, I haven't walked on this road for almost a year. But from time to time, she would recall the initial throbbing and the purest beauty. She would think about how hard it was to come by and tell herself not to get used to it, but to cherish and protect it. Let's go, big sister invites you to take a walk again. Yanjika's eyes lit up, smiling as she extended her slender right hand. Lu Cheng grabbed it and looked ahead. He coughed twice and chuckled. I remember that every time you took the initiative to invite me to take a walk by the lake, you were hinting and tacitly allowing me to be intimate. What about today? Yanjika's eyes widened and her mouth was half open. Her pretty face couldn't help but blush. No way. It's all because you're such a hooligan. I'm not going to take a walk with you. She added bitterly as she tried to pull her hand back. However, Lu Cheng's grip was so tight that she couldn't break free no matter how hard she tried. She had no choice but to grit her teeth and follow him from the other end of the bridge to the lakeside. She followed the memories of the past, crossed familiar scenes, and wandered the intertwining journey between reality and illusion. Holding hands, first kissing, the girl taking out the tissue and the boy cleaning the wooden bench, the casual gossip, the inexperience of sneaking a few kisses every night after taking a stroll. Suddenly, Yanjika and Lu Cheng seemed to have walked into the gap between the past and the present. Luckily we're still together. Otherwise, it would definitely be very, very regretful. Yanjika suddenly said and sighed with emotion. That kind of regret would be a wound that wouldn't heal for the rest of their lives. Lu Cheng's fingers moved slightly and tightly interlocked with his little fairies. He solemnly promised, we'll always walk on this road. Yes, yes. Yanjika nodded vigorously. After a few more steps, Lu Cheng pointed to the side of the road and chuckled. This is where I found Qing Yu and the golden core. Here. Yanjika's eyebrows relaxed. She looked over curiously and whispered. She stared at it for a few seconds, then suddenly turned sideways to face the lake. She put her palms together, closed her eyes, and began to chant. Ku, what are you doing? Lu Cheng asked blankly. The girl's dimples appeared. She pursed her lips slightly and smiled sweetly. I'm thanking Qing Yu. If it wasn't for it, a certain idiot might have retreated on his own. This is the cause of everything. It probably won't like you saying that. A bad life is better than a good death. Lu Qing laughed and shook his head. Then he cleared his throat and said, the real reason was that I saw you standing outside the martial arts club in your Han Chinese costume and finally plucked up the courage to strike up a conversation with you. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come running by the lake. Yenjika rolled her starry eyes and asked him back with a funny smile, could this be the lyrics of the song, just because I took an extra look at you in the crowd? Her voice was clear and delicate, and her voice was beautiful. Lu Qing listened with a smile and teased, Cuckoo, are you whispering sweet nothings to me? If you say so, then so be it. Yenjika put her hands behind her back and walked forward lightly. The couple circled the lake, revisiting the places where they had been intimate before. After calming down the heat on their faces and the rhythm of their breathing, they finally waited for Gizershur. He was still old, but the frequency of his coughing had obviously decreased. Although the 9 words formula had not completely healed his old injuries, it had eased him a lot. Let's get into the water. If you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten about it. Shi Jiangwo admitted frankly. Yenjika covered her mouth and laughed. She felt that this pair of master and disciple were very similar in some aspects. They were a family, and they would enter the same house. Am I scolding myself, unreliable old man? Lu Qing thought to himself. He took out his phone, wallet and other things and handed them to his wife. After thinking for a moment, Gizershur felt that there was no need to pretend to be a master. He also left his phone behind and walked into the lake step by step. The cold air around him condensed into crystals, as if it was going to freeze his body but not affect his movements. Lu Qing imitated him. After taking a deep breath, every inch of his skin shone with cold light. The master and disciple walked further and further away. Less and less of their body parts were exposed to the water. Finally, they steadied their center of gravity and completely disappeared in front of Yenjika. Light rippled around him and a faint pressure came. Lu Qing let his body enter the embryonic state, just like when he practiced underwater to seek the mutation of his root pulp. At his current level, there was no problem for him to stay underwater for 10 to 20 minutes. In the swaying of the lush water plants, Gizershur's mouth opened and opened, stirring up ripples. The ripples flowed to Lu Qing in circles and brought a voice that seemed to come from the horizon. The bottom of the lake is quite big. I did a rough search last time and didn't find anything. Are we going to search inch by inch this time? Lu Qing replied in the form of voice transmission, Master, think about it. The black carp swallowed the Jindan and it must have acted up on the spot. The range of its swimming and jumping is limited. We may find something in the area near the spot where we found it. If we can't find it, I'll give you a big slap. Gizershur always felt that his disciple was unreliable most of the time. Moving forward slowly with their feet on the ground, Lu Qing and Gizershur looked around in the dark, sparkling water. They tried to discern the peculiarities and formed ice mirror or enemy heart freezing move to comprehend the finer details. After searching around the area near the lake, Gizershur suddenly stopped. He frowned and said in the form of voice transmission, You don't say. The feeling here is a little different from the last time I was here. It seems to be changing according to the phase of the moon. The problem couldn't be found by searching alone. But after comparing the two, the abnormality appeared. With his strong night vision, Lu Qing grasped the faint light under the water and looked around. He had a panoramic view of the entire area. Gravel, rocks, swaying water plants, and rubbish thrown down by someone. Other than these, there was nothing else, not to mention a place that looked like the entrance of a cave. After a few seconds of silence, Lu Qing followed the plan he had prepared. He formed a hand seal with his hands and changed it continuously. The visualized ancient characters in his mind jumped as well. Confrontation. Army. Doe. Swordsman. He opened his mouth and his voice shook the surroundings, making the water undulate in a regular manner. wholeness, formation, deference, forward, attainment. As soon as the word attainment came out, the 9 seal scripts in the depths of Lu Cheng's mind appeared at the same time. They combined to form the three-dimensional, mysterious rune. Rumble. At this moment, a low buzzing sound came from somewhere. As the water rippled, the bottom of the lake formed by gravel and rocks cracked open, revealing a stone staircase that extended downwards. A camouflage set up with the help of the moon. Geyser commented with disdain, "Brat, the night you got the Jindan was when the moon was waning, right? And the black carp doesn't have much intelligence." "I don't remember." Lu Cheng answered honestly. "What else do you remember?" Geyser shook his head and laughed. He walked along the stone staircase into the cave. It was moist inside, but there was no water. Lu Cheng suppressed the surge of emotions in his heart and followed his master to the bottom. He saw a simple and empty stone room. There was only a cloud bed here. On it were a few pieces of yellowed paper and a tattered feather robe. "It doesn't look like the cave residence of Longhu Immortal." Geyser, who had seen many relics of cultivation, frowned and whispered. Lu Cheng looked around and guessed. "Maybe it's a place for seclusion." The feather robe seemed to be worn by Longhu Immortal before he died. What about his body? "It's possible." Geyser approached and was about to pick up the feather robe. However, the light breeze caused the robe to instantly decay and scatter in the stone room. The notebooks, on the other hand, were still intact. Lu Cheng looked at them and read the words on the first page. "My life is coming to an end. 130 years of hard work is all in vain. What a pity, what a pity. Predecessors sought the independence of the soul and tried to give birth to a baby in the Jindan. They wanted to break free from the shackles of the body and travel between heaven and earth. Unfortunately, for thousands of years, no one succeeded. I didn't follow this path. I imitated the immortal world to form the Jindan and sought longevity. However, the road ahead was boundless and full of dangers. It ended here." Geyser flipped over the other pages and read quickly. At the end, the master and disciple finally understood what Longhu Immortal did and why his Jindan was preserved until today. According to what Longhu Immortal said, once a cultivator passed away, the Jindan that lost the control of the spirit would either quickly lose control and explode, or barely maintain the balance and dissipate quickly. He used ice and fire to imitate yin and yang and the starry sky to form the Jindan. He wanted to reflect nature and rotate in balance, hoping to be immortal like heaven and earth. Because of this, before he passed away, he decided to give it a try. That was to reverse the spirit and feed the body back to the body, so that the body would be completely destroyed. This would ignite the spirit and completely integrate the spirit and the golden elixir into one, using the immortality of the golden elixir to achieve longevity. In consideration of the possibility of success, he changed the order of the stars inside the golden elixir and engraved the 9 words formula and his own cultivation methods inside. This idea was unprecedented. Longhu Immortal wasn't confident at all. Before he tried it, he wrote down notes for his friends to refer to as a trial and error. As for what happened in the middle, Lu Cheng and Geyser didn't know. They only saw the final result, which was that Longhu Immortal didn't live forever. The Jindan didn't have an independent will, but it was strangely preserved until now. Chapter 589. Lu Cheng and Geyser retracted their gazes and surveyed their surroundings. They didn't discover anything else. Even after using Ice Mirror and Enemy Heart Freezing move to sense their surroundings and the 9 words formula to seek resonance, they still found nothing. "Where's Longhu Immortal's natal artifact?" whispered Shi Jiangwo. Lu Cheng thought for a moment and said, "Maybe the Longhu Immortal sect doesn't have a natal artifact due to their unique method of pill formation. That Guhui who attacked me wouldn't be so careless as to not use such a powerful artifact. That makes sense. Cough, you've improved your judgment." Geyser couldn't help but sigh. Lu Cheng was annoyed and amused at the same time. Master, don't think of me as the student who just started learning martial arts. I'm already close to physical invulnerability. After so many years of practicing martial arts, participating in so many competitions, and experiencing so many things, how could my judgment and knowledge not improve? So what? Even if you reach physical invulnerability, you're still my disciple. Geyser glared at him. He didn't continue the topic and changed the topic. Have you finished reading all the confidential information? Is it useful? After Lu Qing decided to walk the path of blending martial arts and cultivation, Comrade Shi Jiangwo used his connections to obtain the collected remnants of cultivation and over 30 volunteer experiment reports from several major military human research institutes. This helped him further grasp the essence and details of his cultivation. This is also the other reason why I've become mysterious in the eyes of others. Lu Qing sighed inwardly. After a few seconds of silence, he said, I've finished reading it, but I still can't figure out the most crucial part. If it were so easy to figure it out, our country would have long had a cultivator town security team. Geyser laughed and scolded him. Others have spent decades to achieve what they have now. You want to surpass them in a month or two? I just want to find the point that suits me the most. I don't necessarily need to understand the entire system and study it thoroughly. Lu Qing explained with a bitter smile. Geyser waved his hand. All right, let's talk outside. There doesn't seem to be anything useful here. Okay. Lu Qing nodded slightly. He turned to the cloud bed and bowed solemnly. He wanted to tell Longhu Immortal the result and tell him that this was the wrong path. But in the end, he couldn't bear it and only sighed softly. Thank you for finding the way for me. Senior, thank you for giving me this opportunity. After bowing 3 times, Lu Qing collected his thoughts and followed his master out of the abode. Sigh, the path of longevity, the path of longevity. Geyser stood at the entrance and sighed. With a wave of his palm, he collapsed the surroundings and buried Longhu Immortal. In his mind, she was dead and buried. Step by step, they walked back to the shore. The master and disciple shook off the layer of ice that had condensed on their bodies and evaporated the remaining water. Except for their wrinkled clothes, they were no different from before they went into the lake. Yan Zhike heaved a sigh of relief and walked up to them, returning their belongings. Lu Qing used his palm as an iron to flatten his clothes with white steam swirling around him. He asked his master a few questions. When Geyser was far away, he turned on his phone screen and entered the app. He cleared his thoughts and took notes. He said, in Longhu Immortal's last words, reflect nature, and be immortal like heaven and earth, reminded me of something. Back then, when I developed, extended, and improved his celestial star system and regarded all the stars as fire force, and the darkness of the universe as the counterpart of ice force, I felt that I was connected to the universe in a more subtle way. Perhaps, it was the secret that I could communicate with the universe after I formed the core formation. After saying this, he looked at Yan Zhike beside him and said, half explaining and half translating his voice into words, at that time, I felt that it was quite miraculous and I should remember it. But later on, I didn't have a similar feeling and gradually forgot about it. If it weren't for Longhu Immortal's words today, I'm afraid I wouldn't have remembered it until you achieved Dan equilibrium. Longhu Immortal's thought process of moving the stars, changing the layout, and writing the 9 words formula and cultivation techniques in the Gene Dan can be used as a reference. This way, I can naturally use the 9 words formula, force concentration, and fighting formula when I'm at Dan equilibrium. Just thinking about it makes me excited. When that time comes, I'll be a superhuman with extraordinary strength. Yan Zhike burst into laughter and her dimples bloomed like flowers. She felt warm at the thought of Lu Qing writing down his thoughts and thoughts in front of her. After translating each line, Lu Qing read it twice from the beginning and saved it after making some slight changes. He turned to his little fairy and said, now we're just waiting for you to make up for the innate stage, understand withdraw, and achieve Dan equilibrium. When that time comes, I'll be able to observe the details and verify them. Oh. Yan Zhike pretended not to care, but her beautiful black eyes looked up. Have you talked to Dirty Tong and the others? Are you going to sleep with them? Lu Chen grabbed her delicate hand and walked back to the bridge. We've already talked about it. I'm going to sleep with Ru. Besides, the new girl in their dormitory is already doing her internship in Songcheng. She stays in the city at night and won't come back, Yenjika replied with a smile. Lu Chen was about to say something when his right foot suddenly became heavy as if it was carrying a 1,000-pound rock. This made him lose his balance and stagger. He swayed his center of gravity and steadied himself easily. He looked at his wife beside him and asked, "What's going on?" Under the light of the street lamps and the surrounding darkness, Yenjika's face was delicate and beautiful. Her long and black eyelashes trembled as she answered innocently, "What do you mean what's going on?" "I don't know." At this point, she couldn't help but turn her head and look to the side. She covered her mouth and let out a series of clear and pleasant laughter. Lu Qing suddenly understood. He said with surprise and joy, "You've awakened your supernatural ability." The supernatural ability inherited from the two elders of the Ji family and the Empress Dowager. Compared to brother-in-law, Ku should have awakened her supernatural ability more easily. The reason why it hadn't appeared was because she was born with a deficiency. Now that her supernatural ability had awakened, did it mean that she had already made up for her deficiency? Yeah. Didn't I look tired the past 2 days? You thought I was suffering from exam syndrome and massaged me the whole time. Yenjika raised her chin and answered with a smile, "I was going to give you a surprise later, but I couldn't hold back just now." Awesome. You're indeed Coach Yen. What kind of supernatural ability is it? Lu Qing asked, giving her a thumbs up. Well, it's related to the Earth's magnetic field. There are changes in attraction and repulsion, light and heavy. Yenjika rolled her eyes and answered thoughtfully. So your congenital deficiency is gone? Lu Qing asked with concern. The girl pursed her lips and said proudly, "Of course. I feel like I'm about to understand the meaning of withdraw." So fast. Lu Qing blurted out in surprise. Then he received the look of his wife. "Huh? What did you say?" He quickly changed his words and nodded with a normal expression. "You're right. You've been at the top of the professional 9th pin for more than 2 years, and you've been enduring the torture of your congenital deficiency. You've never changed your love for martial arts. You've worked hard and fought hard for it. Your willpower is strong enough. You admire me, right?" Yenjika raised her head and flipped her hair, pretending to be proud and complacent. She added silently in her heart, "I practice martial arts not only because I like it, but also because I want to accompany you and do something for you. Even if it's difficult for me to reach the inhuman stage in the future, it's enough." Lu Chen was overjoyed and praised. He was criticized for his exaggeration, but the girl was smiling contentedly. Just like the past, the two of them said goodbye outside the female dormitory. Yenjika found the dormitory that had been moved once. Under Zhong Yenru's guidance, she saw Li Liantong and Shi Xiangyang. "Wow, Ku, your skin is so good. It's white, tender and smooth." Li Liantong's eyes widened. She leaned close and praised, "Is this the effect of being nourished frequently?" "Bah! Can you not be so dirty when you talk? Let me get used to it first." Yenjika replied, annoyed and amused at the same time. "This is the result of cultivation, not what you said." "Really?" Li Liantong looked at her friend from head to toe and clicked her tongue. "I don't believe you. Your figure is better too. Ah, I want a boyfriend so much." At this moment, Shi Xiangyang ignored her and hugged Yenjika. She praised, "Ku, you're indeed fairer, softer and more fragrant." Zhong Yenru mocked Li Liantong. Dirty Tong has always been ambitious and incompetent. She has a lot of theoretical knowledge, but she doesn't dare to put it into practice at all. "I don't like those who like me, and I don't like those who like me. What can I do? I'm also very desperate." Li Liantong spread her hands and answered. You have to try if you like those who like you. How do you know if they don't like you if you don't try? My silly Ching always says, what if? Yenjika reminded him, exasperated at his failure to meet her expectations. Li Liantong was about to answer when she suddenly remembered her friend's words. She thought for a while and asked in confusion, Ku, what did you just say? Cultivation. Have you been reading too many novels? Do you think I'm stupid? Cultivation is different from martial arts. For ordinary girls, they can only cultivate their spirit and use their spirit to nourish their body. Although they can't cultivate much strength, their skin will be better and whiter, and there won't be any pimples left. Yenjika described. When Lu Cheng was at his lowest point, he thought of starting a simplified cultivation beauty class, but he didn't have the mood to think about the details. When the sequelae were cured and his strength recovered, he didn't need to do this. Instead, he gradually improved the class in his daily discussions with Yenjika, making it easy to get started and not difficult to cultivate. Of course, he didn't expect to strengthen his body very well either. Really? Li Liantong, Zhong Yenru, and Shi Xiangyang asked in surprise and doubt. Ching did it. His martial arts are mixed with cultivation. Yenjika nodded with a solemn expression. Wow! Li Liantong exclaimed. Can we practice it? Of course, Ching specially made it simplified. Yenjika answered with a little pride. I want to make a portrait of your Cheng. Sooner or later. Li Liantong paced back and forth excitedly. So did Zhong Yenru and Shi Xiangyang. Don't be like that. He's still alive. Yenjika covered her face and laughed. After 10 minutes, Li Liantong, Zhong Yenru, and Shi Xiangyang sat cross-legged on their respective beds. Yenjika made hand seals and constantly changed the position of her feet. Confrontation. 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 Seeing that Dirty Tong and the others had calmed down and obtained a tranquil state of mind, Yenjika withdrew her stance and glanced left and right. She felt the same as when Lu Cheng saw a group of foreigners wearing Taoist robes and practicing cultivation. Why do I feel like they're spreading a cult? Chapter 590. Kai Zhongming and the others had moved out of the dormitory because of the new students moving in and the use of the West Dormitory garden. However, Lu Cheng was still an intern, so a bed was reserved for him. At the door of room 502, Unit 1, Building 6, he heard the noise and the strong smell of alcohol before he entered. Tomorrow and the day after tomorrow are the graduation photos and certificates. Are these guys going crazy for the last time? Lu Cheng smiled and pushed the door open. Kai Zhongming was holding a paper cup in one hand and a small bottle of Red Star Erguotu in the other. He was not surprised to see his bad friend come back. He looked at him up and down and said, Cheng, you've recovered pretty well. I didn't know you were hurt before. You didn't believe me when I told you last time, replied Lu Cheng with a smile. He extended his hand and patted Little Ming's shoulder. Little Ming jumped, grimaced in pain, and almost staggered. You're taking revenge. How long has it been? You still remember? Kai Zhongming moved his arm angrily. Revenge is a dish best served cold. You're going to go home and be a tycoon. You won't get another chance like this again, said Lu Cheng half jokingly and half emotionally. As they were about to leave school, most of their former roommates had found a home. Zhao Chang had successfully applied for postgraduate studies and had begun to take private jobs. Zhang Jingye had his wish fulfilled and stayed in Songcheng. He had entered a branch of a large company. Although the company was famous for its overtime work, the salary was really good. Old Qiu Zhigao, had received several offers, but he was not satisfied. In the end, through Qin Mo's relationship, he entered a local private enterprise. The salary was not high, but it was good that he stayed in a big city. Mao Yuanqing and his girlfriend both went to a foreign company. Qin Mo got a venture capital from his father and planned to start a business first. Currently, there were two directions. One was to form a team and promote the giant company. In the meantime, he would do his own products. For example, when he persuaded the restaurant chain to accept mobile payments, he would give back his own part to the merchants and build a closer relationship with them. This would pave the way for him to sell the cashier software later. Of course, this was not the only way. The second was to invest in a local third-party payment company. Although it was currently a battle between two major powers, there were still many scattered companies. Just like some chess and card websites, large amounts of gambling funds could be easily checked. Using the official payment method was the same as courting death. Then, they would find similar third-party payments and use methods like topping up to avoid the goal of achieving the goal of money laundering. As the saying goes, every snake has its way, and every mouse has its hole. When Lu Qing heard Qin Mo talk about this before, he had a whole new level of respect for him. He didn't expect this rich second generation who usually fooled around to be so smart. Of course, when it came to starting a business, it didn't necessarily mean success with ideas, funds, and connections. On this road, many seniors had fallen. So far, only Tang Wen, who was addicted to games, hadn't found a job. But he didn't care too much. After all, he had passed the Qinghai exam. Everything was fine. After chatting with everyone about their recent situation, Lu Qing took out a paper cup and poured hot water into it. It was slightly cold. He looked around and said, "We have graduated and stepped into society. I hope we can all fly higher." Fly higher. The half-drunk Xiao Cheng, Qiu Zhigao, and the others shouted complacently and excitedly. They gulped down the wine in their cups. After throwing water bottles and all kinds of unwanted items at each retention event, they all went limp and fell into silence. It wasn't clear whether it was because they were drunk and confused, or because they were melancholy that they could never go back to being young and frivolous. Lu Qing looked around and laughed softly. He secretly made a hand gesture and sang the word, confrontation, like a lullaby. The atmosphere in the room became quiet. From time to time, the sound of water bottles breaking and shouts of liberation, regret, venting, and lamentation could be heard. Lu Qing took a picture of this scene and sent it to Yanjika. With one hand in each hand, he threw all his roommates back to the upper bunk, including the drunk little Ming. "Qing, why is my mind so clear? Why can't my hands and feet listen to me?" he said. Qin Mo turned over on the opposite bed and answered, "Me too. My head doesn't hurt." "Did you drink fake wine?" Kai Zhongming guessed blankly. Lu Qing didn't say anything. He left the dormitory and borrowed Xiao Chang's spare bed sheet to sleep for the night. The next day, he trained by the Weishui Lake again. He tried to adjust the positions of his qi, blood, force, and spirit during force concentration so that the stars they formed would naturally form the word, fighting. After the morning training, he received his bachelor's uniform. Under the gaze of many reporters and freshmen, he took graduation photos and dormitory souvenirs. Yanjika borrowed a similar outfit and was invited to take photos with her major, pretending that she was still one of them. In the end, the couple got rid of the irrelevant people and took photos in every memorable place in the new campus. In the following days, Lu Qing and Yanjika stayed in Songqing for a few days. They revisited old haunts and returned to their old dating scenes. They tasted all kinds of familiar yet strange delicacies, making the bits and pieces in their memories more vivid. It was a pity that the spicy crab restaurant was doing worse and worse. It closed before the new year, so the couple couldn't relive their first date. They could only find a similar restaurant. At the beginning of July, they reluctantly bid farewell to Songqing and flew back to Shushan. The first 2 to 3 years of college were very short compared to the rest of their lives. However, in Lu Qing and Yanjika's hearts, it was the beginning of the baby bird opening its eyes and seeing the world. None of the memories could be forgotten. They would be engraved in their bones. Carrying his luggage and stepping into the house, Lu Qing was asked as soon as he saw his mother. "Where's Zhika?" "I'm your biological child." Lu Qing replied, amused. "Mom, Zhika has been in America for half a year. She has to go home." She'll come over for dinner tomorrow night. Okay, I'll go to the market tomorrow morning. Why are you back so late? The food is cold. I'll heat it up for you before you eat. Chi Fong nagged. She picked up the plate and walked into the kitchen. I'm late. Lu Qing explained with a wry smile. Lu Jisheng picked up the thermos and sized his son up. You've recovered well. Are you hungry? Eat first. I'll go out for a walk. He said the last sentence very softly to prevent Chi Fong from hearing. As soon as Lu Jisheng went out, Chi Fong poked her head out and asked, Cheng, did your dad go out? Yes. Lu Qing didn't help to hide it. Your dad is really too much. Is he so addicted to chess? He can't even sit still. If he wasn't waiting for you, he would have gone out after dinner. Chi Fong nagged and retreated into the kitchen. In order to wait for me, Dad deliberately postponed the chess game, thought Lu Qing, flattered. He waved to his two cousins on the sofa, Qi Yunfei and Qin Xiaoxiao. Then he turned around and walked to the dining table. He took a photo of the dishes that didn't need to be heated and sent it to Yanjika. Do you want to eat? Me too. Yanjika added a picture of a table full of food with an emoji of, come on, let's hurt each other. Lu Qing couldn't help but laugh. Brother Lu Qing, are you chatting with sister-in-law? Qi Yunfei looked more beautiful and cute with her short hair. Her college entrance exam results were average, only good enough for an ordinary university. However, she was very satisfied and didn't want to repeat her studies. Yes. Lu Qing answered frankly. Qi Yunfei said half doubtfully and half emotionally, you have been together for 3.5 years. Why are you still so clingy? What do you mean by clingy? This is called having the same 3 views. We can talk about many things and topics. Lu Qing retorted, annoyed and amused. Aren't you and Ding like this? For example, just now they said that they both love delicious food, especially Shushan specialties. Hearing Lu Cheng's question, Qi Yunfei's expression suddenly became strange. Qin Xiaoxiao, who still had some baby fat left, looked at the direction of the kitchen and said in a low voice, Brother Lu Cheng, Sister Feifei broke up long ago. Ah. Lu Cheng was confused. Immediately, a strong desire to gossip surged. When did it happen? What happened? His cousin and Ding Yanba had been dating for more than 3 years, and they started from the most ignorant and most innocent junior high school. How could they break up so suddenly? Qi Yunfei wrinkled her nose and said, he hooked up with other girls behind my back. Humph, he specially applied for a second account, but the password was the same. I played with his phone once and was curious about who the number belonged to. I tried to log in and found that the girl was just average. I don't know why he liked her. Do you need me to teach him a lesson? Lu Qing suddenly realized and comforted her. No, no, no. Qi Yunfei hurriedly shook her head. You are quite generous. Lu Qing asked in surprise. Qin Xiaoxiao couldn't help but laugh. Brother Lu Qing, Sister Feifei had a new boyfriend not long after they broke up. Her deskmate is now Ding Yanbo regretting it and has been wanting to get back together. She had a new boyfriend not long after they broke up. Lu Qing sighed and laughed at himself. I really don't understand you young people. After dinner, Lu Qing helped to clean up the table and sat on the sofa. While chatting with his two cousins, he thought about how to spend this month in Shushan. Look for Fatty Jiang. He didn't have summer holidays anymore. He had officially joined a company in Huacheng. After Qin Rui got his professional 9th pin certificate, he went to Gaofen to look for more opportunities. He wasn't in Shushan either. Tao Xiaofei reluctantly settled down. His father sent him to a county project and he could only come back for a few days every month. Now that he thought about it, Lu Qing realized that he couldn't find any good friends in Shushan. Everyone was starting to get busy for the future. At this moment, Yanjika sent a message. Sitting blankly expression, Sister Jingjing is outside the Great Wall. Shuang 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 was brought back to the company in Gaofen by her father. Song Li also found a job in Gaofen. Anyway, other than my relatives and you, I am all alone in Shushan. I feel a little sad, the couple's hearts are in sync. Lu Qing sighed to himself. Laughing out tears expression, what a coincidence. I was also counting friends of the same age and the result was the same as yours. Speaking of this, he added emotionally, that's a good thing. Because we have all grown up. For the whole of July, Lu Qing and Yan Zhika stayed at different places and moved around frequently. Sometimes, they would go to Zhenkei or Ningxue to accompany their elders. Other times, they would go to Jiangnan to play for a few days. At the beginning of August, they started to pack their luggage and prepare for a 20-odd-day trip. Their first stop was overseas. Their destination was Nile, the place with pyramids and mummies. Chapter 591. South of Nile, Teton City. It was August, close to the desert. It was dry and hot here. Under the scorching sun, even the air seemed to be distorted. Looking as far as the eye could see, the dense fog made it seem like an illusion. Lu Qing and Yan Zhika, each riding a camel, swayed as they approached the remains of the temple where Isis was worshipped. Not far behind them, a professional tour guide in a long robe and headscarf followed with narrowed eyes. He was invisible himself to avoid disturbing the guests. With Lu Cheng's strength, he had no problem traveling in the Nile tourism industry. However, he didn't have to rely on brute force for everything. That would lose his fun and mood. Hiring a tour guide with excellent connections at a high price could save him a lot of trouble. Just like earlier, if it were just two foreign tourists wanting to ride a camel, they would definitely be extorted and might not be able to enjoy themselves. However, once the tour guide stepped in and found a familiar friend, the problem was immediately solved. The reasonable price and attentive service made the young couple feel comfortable riding the camel. You get what you pay for. If it could be solved with money, there was no need to resort to violence. After approaching the ancient and dilapidated temple, Yan Zhika jumped off the camel lightly and looked at the interior happily. She had long sleeves and trousers, and her black hair was tied up with a headscarf. She looked like a local, but her actual purpose was to protect herself from the sun. A girl's obsession with sunscreen was unimaginable to men. Lu Qing, on the other hand, was wearing a t-shirt, shorts, and martial arts shoes without any self-awareness. This is the temple of Mother Earth Goddess Isis. Yan Zhika pointed to the front and introduced to Lu Qing. It is said that one of her original forms is Inanna from Sumerian mythology, the goddess of Venus, fertility, sex, and love. Seeing someone nodding in confusion, Yan Zhika said with a smile, "Do you feel that this goddess Inanna is a stranger?" "I think I've heard of her before, but also not," Lu Qing replied embarrassedly. "This is a tourist spot added by a ferry at the last minute. I didn't have time to do my homework." "Then I'll change her name, and you will be familiar with her." Yan Zhika pursed her lips and smiled. "What is it?" Lu Qing asked curiously. "Call me Teacher Yan first. Instructor Yan is fine too." The girl turned her head and lifted her chin slightly. Her slender and beautiful neck was faintly discernible under the cover. Lu Qing was amused. "Please give me some pointers, Instructor Yan." "Cough, have you heard of Aphrodite?" "Venus, have you heard of it?" "Air, these two names are just the difference between Gu Qinhai's name and Gu Luo's name." "Also, have you heard of the Holy Mother?" Yan Zhika raised her hand and said, "One of their prototypes is Inanna." "She's really something." Lu Qing was dumbfounded. After showing off her knowledge, Yan Zhika pursed her lips and pointed at the weathered sculptures, statues and stone pillars. "Come, help me take a picture. I'll ask the tour guide to take a picture of us later." "Okay." Lu Qing took out his digital camera and waited for her to pose. At this moment, a man who claimed to be a staff member came over. He had a unique beard and indicated that he could take a picture of the couple. Knowing that he would be blackmailed if he accepted the offer, Lu Qing shook his head firmly without any hesitation. When Lu Qing pressed the shutter, the staff member suddenly jumped out and was captured by the camera, leaving behind an image. Then, he pestered them and kept asking for money in slang English. Although the couple was not short on money, they were not willing to be forced. Lu Qing looked back at the tour guide and saw him walking over quickly. He reached out his right hand and patted the staff member on the shoulder. In an instant, the staff member felt cold all over. He felt like he was locked in a cold storage at the edge of the desert during the hot season. He couldn't help but shiver. He wanted to open his mouth but could only hear the chattering of his teeth. He wanted to move but found that his body was stiff and difficult to control. Lu Qing pulled his little fairy away as if nothing had happened and changed their position to take another picture. He also signaled the tour guide to take care of the rest. The tiger on the ground, who always liked to act tough, was frightened by the encounter just now. He yelled that he wanted to call the police but didn't dare to make any real moves. He was easily persuaded by the tour guide. After taking a group photo, the young couple held hands and wandered around the ruins of the ancient temple. They talked and laughed, and they were very happy. After visiting the last scenic spot, they returned to the bustling area. Under the tour guide's introduction, they entered a Babula restaurant, which was also a special barbecue restaurant. Here, they carefully selected lamb legs and other ingredients and applied pepper, salt, and ingredients recorded in their ancestral secret recipe. The barbecue was fragrant and tender. It's not bad. It's different from what we had in Dika. But I'm still a little sick of it. Yen Zhika looked at Lu Qing with bright eyes and said in a slightly aggrieved tone, "Nile is all barbecue barbecue barbecue. If not, it's just pancakes and bread. Why didn't they develop other methods? China's food culture has a long history and rich methods." Dika was the capital of Nile. It was the couple's first stop upon arrival. They spent 3 days there and saw many ancient relics, pyramids, and mummies. That's why we have to lower our standards when traveling. Lu Qing looked at the girl with a smile and said, "We still have one more stop in Nile before going to the grasslands. It's definitely different from here." Yeah. Yen Zhika's eyes flickered. She chuckled and said, "I'm thinking, if you were the domineering CEO, what would you say just now?" Lu Qing thought for a while and held back his laughter. "I'll contract the kitchen here and make you a bowl of egg fried rice. The eggs must be laid by Shushan's free-range chickens and flown over. Not domineering enough. You should buy this restaurant and fly in a few chefs to make Chinese food." Yen Zhika looked up and dissed the domineering CEO in high spirits. After eating barbecue and drinking the specialty drinks, the couple returned to the hotel. One rested while the other pondered over the next day's itinerary. Half an hour later, Yen Zhika stood up, against all odds, and got into a stance. She calmed herself down until her godly will was complete. Her mind and body were at peace. She retracted her qi and blood, allowing her force and spirit to collapse inward and condense into a small ball in her lower abdomen. At the end of July, she understood the meaning of retract. Under Lu Cheng's guidance, she began to break through to the Dan stage. This was a process, not a node. Lu Cheng had used the opposition and rotation of his supernatural abilities to balance and form the Dan. This time, he let Yen Zhika use her supernatural ability of earth as yang, and her own power as yin. Under the control of her spirit and the replenishment of her qi and blood, they opposed each other, rotated, and balanced. Gradually, there were signs of success in the Dan stage. In another 7 or 8 days, the girl should be able to use this method to completely enter the Dan stage. While Yen Zhika was cultivating, Lu Cheng was not idle either. He pressed his right hand on his wife's back and used the ice mirror to listen to her subtle changes. He compared them with the experience he could recall in order to find the key. Over and over again, even though Yen Zhika was extremely passionate about her dream of reaching the Dan stage, she still couldn't overcome the exhaustion of her body without using the swordsman formula and the wholeness formula. As the night deepened, she lay on the bed and didn't want to move. "I'm sweating all over," she said with satisfaction. "But I don't want to move at all. I don't want to take a shower." She just wanted to lie there comfortably and be massaged by Cheng. "You'll feel better if you take a hot shower." Lu Cheng smiled and massaged her. "Didn't you see the notice from the hotel? There's going to be a power outage later. There won't be any hot water. Maybe there will be a water outage too." "No, no, no." Yenjika turned her body and shook her sweaty hair. She buried her face in the pillow with a look of non-cooperation. "Who's the one who always urges me to take a shower? Who loves to take a shower the most?" Lu Cheng laughed. "I'm going to stink you to death later." Yenjika replied, hatefully. "I don't care. I'm just worried that you can't accept it." Lu Cheng laughed and helped his little fairy to turn around. He saw her squinting her dark eyes and quietly observing the outside world. "Humph." Yenjika pouted. "If there's a power outage, you're in charge of the hot water. If there's no water, you'll freeze and turn into water. Aren't you known as a multifunctional household robot? I have to save my ice force in case there's no air conditioning at night." Lu Cheng explained and tried to pull Yenjika up. "No, no, no." Yenjika shook her head like a rattledrum. She lifted her right foot and pressed it against Lu Cheng. She even used a repulsive force. Lu Cheng easily broke through the repulsive force and grabbed her foot. He stretched out his fingers and scratched it a few times. His little fairy wriggled like a fish and laughed shyly and angrily. She hurriedly withdrew her foot and sat up abruptly. After playing around for a while, the atmosphere gradually heated up. Suddenly, the girl gasped and said, "Shower first, shower first." "Who said she didn't want to shower just now?" Lu Cheng said vaguely. Don't you know? Don't you know that girls are fickle?" Yenjika resisted with all her might. "Then go shower." Lu Cheng carried the girl in his arms. "No, no. I don't want to shower with you." The topic seemed to return to the beginning, but it gradually quieted down. After some time, the couple lay on the bed. One was physically and mentally satisfied, while the other was smiling like a peach blossom. "I'm thinking of a technical problem," Lu Cheng said thoughtfully. I'm not listening. It must be extremely dirty." Yenjika closed her eyes and shook her head. "I'm talking about your supernatural ability." Lu Cheng snickered, but before he could finish, he was interrupted by the girl. "I already said I'm not listening. Your mind is so dirty." In the midst of their banter, they suddenly heard a loud boom. It seemed like an explosion had happened somewhere in the city. Immediately after, firecracker-like sounds came from all over the city. "What's wrong?" Lu Cheng sat up. Yenjika picked up her phone and saw a message from the embassy. It said, "You're in trouble. Nile is in turmoil, suspected to be a coup d'état. All Chinese citizens are advised not to go out blindly. If necessary, please head to the embassy, consulate, or Chinese company's premises and wait for evacuation." At the same time, Lu Cheng also received the message. The couple looked at each other, feeling a little unreal. Something big happened just like that? P.S. For the sake of harmony, the war-torn zones and their surroundings do not correspond to the real world. Please don't make wild guesses. Chapter 592. Without much confusion, Lu Cheng cleared his mind and said calmly to Yenjika, "Cuckoo, I'll call the embassy to confirm the situation so that we won't lose contact. Pack your luggage. Put the important and necessary things in your backpack. Don't bring too many clothes, just 2 sets will do. Throw the rest in your suitcase and be prepared to throw them away if you can't take them with you." The message he just sent included the embassy's landline. It was the first time for Yenjika to encounter such a situation, so it was natural for her to be flustered. However, after hearing Lu Cheng's calm tone and feeling his confident attitude, she quickly calmed down. She seemed to have a plan in mind. She nodded gently and answered, okay. She put on her clothes and walked quickly to the sofa. She opened the suitcase and took out the necessary items. Lu Qing held his phone and stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window. While looking at the burning buildings outside, he dialed the embassy's landline. Maybe it was because there were too many people calling back after receiving the message, but all 3 landlines were busy. He couldn't get through, so he decided to look for his master. Hey, brat, I didn't expect you to experience this kind of thing. Back in the days when I was in the war-torn zones. Geezer sure bragged casually. The corner of Lu Cheng's mouth twitched. He almost couldn't control himself and interrupted this unreliable old man. After saying a few words, Shi Jiangwo smacked his lips and said, east of the Nile is the war-torn zone. It's going to connect together. This old man was still thinking about when I should send you there for training. Great, I've encountered it myself. Okay, I won't say more. I'll ask for the military's contact number in Nile, not the embassy's. Won't say more. That's called not saying more. Lu Qing face-bombed and cursed silently. After waiting for more than a minute, Geezer sure sent a message with the phone number. The gunshots outside were getting louder and louder. It was as if the whole city was being fried. The lights around them flickered on and off, making the hotel look like an isolated island in the middle of a vast ocean. Lu Cheng had been through a lot. Under such circumstances, he remained calm and composed. He calmly called the military personnel sent to him. Hello, who is this? After the call was connected, the person on the other side asked in English vigilantly. Lu Cheng wanted to imitate the Dragon King's simple, I'm Chen Qitao, and introduce himself. But considering his own popularity, he had to spend a little more effort. I'm Lu Cheng, a disciple of the Ice Gods sect. I'm currently traveling in Nile with my girlfriend. I couldn't contact the embassy, so I got your number through my master. Heaven-shaking roar. The other side asked in surprise and delight. Obviously, they had heard of this heavenly son of heaven. I won't be happy with your answer. Lu Qing complained to himself. Yes, what happened to Nile? What should we do? The military personnel pondered for a moment before replying. Tonight's incident happened very suddenly. There weren't any demonstrations as a prelude. The information we have gathered isn't comprehensive enough. So far, we can only confirm one thing. Many tribes in Nile have formed anti-government armed forces and are fighting fiercely with the Central Army. According to reliable sources, more than 5 brigades of the Central Army have already defected. There are quite a few mighty ones with physical invulnerability as well as many inhumans. He paused for a moment before adding, this is rather strange. In Nile, the pharaoh has a very high reputation. Most of the mighty ones are willing to listen to his orders. If he were to make a speech on television, things wouldn't be so chaotic. In the end, it's as if the pharaoh has gone missing. After a while, the military personnel returned to the main topic. With your strength, there shouldn't be any problems as long as you aren't targeted. Where are you currently? Tetons, Lu Qing replied succinctly. That's a little out of the way. There aren't any projects nearby. The military personnel pondered for a few seconds before continuing. Currently, there are 2 paths. The first is to head north along the Nile River and rendezvous with the workers of a few enterprises at Kukhang. Then, head towards Dika. Once you reach Dika, you can evacuate via plane or ship. If this path isn't accessible, you can head northeast to the port city of Fartuat at the edge of the Sea of Death. We will coordinate with ships to pick you up. However, don't be anxious. Perhaps the chaos will die down by daybreak. I will inform you if we decide to evacuate. Lu Cheng had a plan in mind. He replied calmly, okay. Putting down his phone, he listened to the sparse gunshots. He turned to Yen Zhika and saw that she had already moved the important items into 2 backpacks, one big and one small. The rest was left in the trolley box. She would take what she could and leave what she couldn't. Let me give it a try. Lu Qing comforted his little fairy with a smile. What do you want to try? Yen Jika was confused. Lu Qing didn't answer. He walked to the side, carried his luggage, and twisted his body on the spot. He launched an elbow strike and threw a punch, causing the air to crackle. Not bad. It doesn't affect my movements. I don't need to change my fighting style. He nodded in satisfaction. Indeed, I have to give it a try. Yen Jika's pink lips parted slightly. She had a look of realization mixed with annoyance. Then, she followed Lu Cheng's example and carried a small black backpack. She exercised her fists and legs to get used to the feeling of something swaying behind her back. I'm a little nervous, but also a little excited. She pursed her lips and nodded slightly. She had always wanted to travel the world with her sword. However, she was still a little scared when something really happened. Lu Qing chuckled. There wasn't a hint of worry in his eyes. It might not be the worst development. The military wants us to wait and see. Cool, take a nap. Don't be in a hurry to use the wholeness formula. Rest up and prepare for what comes next. What about you? Yen Jika asked instinctively. Me? I'm still in good spirits. I'll check the terrain first and be on guard against possible disturbances outside. I'll take a nap after you get enough sleep, Lu Qing replied in his usual tone. All right. At times like this, Yen Jika didn't try to persuade or argue. She obediently followed his instructions and lay on the bed with her clothes on. She didn't want to waste time. She closed her eyes and pretended to be asleep. After 2 minutes, she opened a slit and said timidly, I can't sleep, I can't even enter meditation. My mind is full of messy thoughts. Lu Qing shook his head and chuckled. He sat beside her and reached out to massage her temples. He kept chanting, confrontation. 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 The atmosphere softened and the surroundings became quiet. Yen Jika slowly relaxed her tension. Her eyelids started to get heavy. She mumbled, Cheng, I feel like my mother is singing a lullaby to me. Empress Dowager knows how to sing a lullaby. Lu Qing asked casually. No. Yen Jika replied with a smile. No. Then why do you say it's like? Lu Qing was amused and surprised. Anyway, it's like. If she sings it, it should feel like this. Yen Jika emphasized and slowly fell asleep. When she fell asleep, Lu Qing looked outside and listened to the surroundings. He also searched and downloaded a detailed map of Nile before the internet was disconnected. Amidst the occasional gunshots and human voices, he thought of something. He called the hired tour guide and asked him to rent a car. Without the unlimited energy supply of Jindan, using a car instead of walking could effectively conserve energy. This could be the difference between life and death at a critical moment. The tour guide explained that things would calm down soon. Besides, there was no place to rent a car in the middle of the night. He would come with the driver at dawn. At around 4 in the morning, Lu Qing heard noises approaching. The gunshots were getting clearer and clearer. He quickly woke Yen Jika up and told her to hurry up and recover. Yen Jika's hazy eyes quickly cleared up. She soon looked like she was ready for a battle. She didn't look like she had just woken up. Gunshots approached and glass shattered. Orders and shouts came from the bottom floor of the hotel. Lu Qing put on his backpack and listened carefully. The rebels are looting and plundering. They haven't hurt anyone yet. If we fight head-on, we might become the main target and be targeted by the rebels in the entire city. Yen Jika put on her backpack and analyzed. Yeah, we don't have to do anything. Let's hide and figure out the situation first. Lu Qing looked around and said, when the rebels are about to reach this floor, we'll climb through the window to the bottom. They probably won't come back after plundering this place once. Yeah. Yen Jika nodded vigorously. Lu Qing looked at the thumb-sized cars on the ground and asked Yen Jika with a smile, are you scared? No. I'm not afraid of heights. I'm almost at the dance stage. Yenjika raised her chin and said, besides, we've already jumped buildings before. While they were talking, they heard a mixture of local dialect and English at the elevator entrance and the emergency exit. Heavy and messy footsteps could be heard clearly. Lu Cheng and Yenjika looked at each other and opened the ventilation window. With a push of their hands, they squeezed out easily and stood on the narrow protrusion. His feet seemed to be embedded in the concrete. He reached out to hold the girl's delicate hand and helped her flip over. Then, he held Yenjika's waist and jumped and pressed down, landing firmly on the protruding point of the next floor. He was so precise that there was no error. Yenjika exerted force on her wrist and pushed open the closed window. Under the dumbfounded gazes of the crooked men and women, who were wearing nothing but bathrobes, she jumped in. Lu Qing followed her effortlessly. He and Little Fairy quickly moved to the lower floor and randomly found an empty room to wait. After more than half an hour, the rebels finished plundering and left in high spirits. They didn't even care that there were only suitcases and no guests in the room. There must be rats who know how to dig holes. It's a little chaotic. Let's go to the lobby to find other guests and see who drove here. We'll try to form a group and evacuate to Kukang as soon as possible. Lu Qing made a prompt decision. Without waiting for the military's notice. That's what I think too. Yenjika chimed in without hesitation. The two went down to the lobby and saw many foreign tourists gathered. They were frantically discussing the situation and solutions. Lu Qing was about to go up and talk when he suddenly heard a car coming at high speed. The car screeched to a halt at the entrance. He took a step back and stood in front of the girl. Through the glass, Lu Qing saw a group of Nile soldiers in military uniforms with guns spread out and seal off the hotel. Why are they here again? He muttered subconsciously. Yenjika pondered for a few seconds and said, this shows that the situation is very chaotic. The rebels and government forces are scattered and have no contact with each other. Those who came later don't even know that this place has been plundered. Does this mean that even if we go overboard, we won't be surrounded by a large force? Lu Qing said thoughtfully. Yes. Yenjika nodded solemnly. At this moment, the hotel door was pushed open. A strong and burly officer walked in majestically, surrounded by armed soldiers. He wasn't holding a gun, but a scimitar. After looking around, he said coldly, take them all away. Chapter 593. The moment the officer with the scimitar gave the order, the soldiers behind swarmed in and spread out, surrounding the crowd. The black and heavy muzzles of their guns were leveled at them like evil and terrifying eyes. The foreign tourists were so frightened that they lost their voices and dared not move. Not all of the soldiers remained in place. 90% of them passed by and came to the elevator. Half of them took the elevator while the other half climbed the safety passageway. Their footsteps were heavy and messy, as though they were going to search floor by floor and not miss a single guest. The remaining soldiers each took up a position and signaled the tourists in the lobby to hold their heads and squat down, waiting for them to gather and leave. Seeing that there weren't many enemies left, a blond Caucasian man mustered his courage and shouted, I'm an American citizen. Our consul is rushing over from Kukang. The United States had an embassy and 3 consulates in Nile. Hearing the shouts and seeing that the hostages were eager to give it a try, the officer with the scimitar made a gesture with his eyes. I don't care who you are, squat down. A soldier rushed over, raised the butt of his gun, and smashed it on the blond Caucasian man's back. He screamed in pain and staggered forward. Bam! The soldier kicked the back of his leg with his leather boot, causing the American tourist to kneel heavily on one knee. Not daring to move, he hurriedly raised his hands to hold his head. Oh, my God! One by one, the tourists came to terms with the reality. They held their heads and squatted down. Lu Qing didn't act rashly. To be honest, with his strength, he was still worried just now. But now, these people weren't enough. But he had to consider Yenjika and the innocent crowd. If he couldn't end the battle in a short time, Yenjika might be implicated. Even though she was almost at the dance stage, she hadn't experienced life and death battles. If she panicked and made a mistake, it would be a regret that could never be made up for. Lu Qing squatted down and took the opportunity to look around, taking in the situation. There are 5 soldiers with guns guarding us. They are spread out, so I can't catch all of them in one go. There are 2 soldiers at the stairs and 2 at the elevator. There are another 2 outside the main entrance. As for the rest, I don't know. That military officer has his own way of walking. His combat strength should be on par with the more powerful ordinary dance stage. Lu Qing thought for a while and said to Yenjika, who was also squatting beside him, this is different from the rebel army. They are spaced so well that it's impossible to attack 2 of them at the same time. Also, they can easily form a crossfire. They seem to have received formal training and aren't a mob. I think so too. Did they betray us, or did they take advantage of the chaos to do something? It's weird. Yenjika replied in a low voice. Lu Qing nodded slightly and whispered in his wife's ear, things are a little strange. We can't follow them. If we get into a situation that we can't solve, we'll be in trouble. Cool, I'll find a chance to attack that officer later. Hide behind that pillar, don't attract attention, and avoid stray bullets. 2. Bye. But. She muttered to herself, I'm almost at the dance stage. It's not a problem for me to deal with 2 or 3 soldiers, it's mainly because you don't have experience and make mistakes. Once we leave the hotel, I'll watch over you and you can take your time. Later, if a soldier's attention isn't attracted by me and wants to attack you, the first thing you need to do is to use your supernatural ability to get rid of his gun. The second thing you need to do is be ruthless. Don't think about anything else. This was a precautionary plan. It could effectively avoid mistakes and prevent Ko from being hurt by the gun in close combat. Okay. Hearing that she had a mission and wasn't a burden, Yenjika was no longer depressed. Her fighting spirit was aroused. She repeated silently, get rid of the gun. Be ruthless. Get rid of the gun. Be ruthless. As a top student, she had already started to plan how to use her supernatural ability and martial arts to get rid of the gun. Seeing that all the hostages were squatting down, the soldier who knocked over the American tourists walked back to his original position. When he passed by a mixed-race tourist with exaggerated breasts, he extended his leg to feel them and let out a vulgar laugh. You. The female tourist was angry, but she didn't dare to say anything. Oh, be careful. We'll talk about this after we bring all of them back, reminded the officer with the scimitar. Talk about this? How can we talk about this? Many tourists in the lobby suddenly understood. Their bodies started to tremble uncontrollably and they cried out loud. It was as if they could already foresee the tragic ending. Bam! The soldier who was reprimanded fired a shot at the window on the other side. He shouted angrily, "Shut up!" At this moment, Lu Qing transmitted a message to Yenjika. Now! Flames and frost rose from the surface of his body. Suddenly, a crimson fireball and a crystal cold light swirled around each other. The fireball and cold light instantly disintegrated into 9 balls. As Lu Qing leaped, they shot towards the 5 soldiers, the stairs, and the elevator. They were like arrows released from a fully drawn bow. After obtaining the complete set of cultivation techniques, Lu Qing didn't waste it. He combined them with his own techniques and developed several application techniques for ice force and fire force. Boom! The nearest soldier was smashed in the face by the fireball. His head was badly bruised and charred. He threw away his gun in pain and fell to the ground, struggling. Gradually, he fell silent. Of the 2 soldiers who were slightly closer to him, one of them had his arm unnaturally twisted by the explosion and rolled to the side twice. The other one was covered in a layer of ice. His eyes were confused, his movements were slow, and his whole body was stiff, like a rusty robot. The other 2 soldiers and the guards at the stairs and elevator reacted in time due to the distance. They rolled or dodged skillfully. Yenjika followed the plan. She supported herself with her hand and flipped to the back of the pillar on the right. Lu Qing didn't care about anything else. He landed not far from the officer with a single leap. A flaming red scimitar was coming at him. The officer's face was cold. He expanded his back muscles and arms, as if he was going to cut through metal with one strike. Lu Cheng's body paused. He gathered his qi and blood and changed his rhythm. Then, he took a step diagonally, shook out his right arm, and punched the side of the officer's scimitar. Bam! 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 The place where he was originally standing was filled with bullets and sparks. It was the hurried counterattack of the remaining soldiers. They didn't dare to shoot directly at Lu Cheng's body. They were afraid that if he dodged, they would accidentally hurt the officer. Bam! Lu Cheng's body grew taller and bigger, like a god descending from the sky. He punched the side of the officer's scimitar fiercely. Crack! Under the punch, the scimitar broke like a piece of paper and hit the officer's shoulder, breaking his collarbone into two pieces. He couldn't maintain his cold face and staggered with a twisted expression. Bam! Lu Qing reached out with his left hand and grabbed the other arm of the officer. Then, he poured the ice spirit force into the officer, making him stiffen and shiver. A grab followed by a press, he pushed the officer back 2 steps. Stars were splattered on the ground behind him. With a pull of his hand and a turn of his body, Lu Qing hid behind the officer and shouted in English, "Stop! Put down your guns!" At this moment, Yenjika saw a soldier circling to the side of Lu Cheng's temple secretly. Her heart tightened and she instinctively activated the plan. The muzzle of the soldier's gun suddenly became heavy and dropped to the ground. Then, a slender and well-proportioned leg kicked the gun away with a bang. Yenjika's mind was filled with what she had just repeated. Without thinking, she stomped on the ground, turned around, and kicked again. Bam! Her left leg tightened into a whip and whipped between the soldier's legs. Poof! The sound of something breaking was heard. The soldier's eyes rolled back and he fainted. His lower body was quickly soaked. Lu Qing shouted again, "Stop!" At the same time, he held the frozen officer and circled him. The soldiers and survivors who rushed in from the gate stopped and didn't dare to move. Lu Qing looked around and said, "Put down your guns." He made a gesture of breaking the officer's throat. The soldiers hesitated and threatened, but what they got in return was the officer's broken arm. Thus, they threw away their guns without a leader. Lu Qing ordered them to make way and shouted to the rest of the tourists, "Hurry up and leave." The group of tourists seemed to have woken up from a dream. They even forgot to thank him and hurried out of the door. In 2s and 3s, they found a car and left. Some of them knew that it was chaotic outside and didn't dare to run around. They gathered outside and waited for Lu Qing and Yenjika to come out. Lu Qing carried the speechless officer and approached his wife. He glanced at the unconscious soldier who was bleeding and bleeding. You asked me to be more ruthless." Yenjika explained blankly and absent-mindedly. "Well done." Lu Qing praised sincerely. He held the officer hostage and brought Yenjika out of the hotel slowly. They got into the rough jeep. After waiting for a while, when the remaining soldiers came down with the other tourists, he made another threat to let them go and let everyone leave separately. Next, he didn't try to unite the foreigners who stayed behind. Instead, he ordered Yenjika to drive to the north. If there were people who could and were willing to follow, let them follow. There was no need to delay. To him, the safety of his little ferry was the most important thing. Teton City, in the government building. A young general with blue eyes and a thick beard finished listening to the report and picked up the hotel's check-in documents. "Lu Qing! Lu Qing!" the general roared. "Are those intelligence officers drowned in donkey dung? Why didn't they monitor and report such people entering the country?" An official beside him smiled bitterly. "General Ferrio, many of them have been transferred. They don't have enough manpower. Moreover, everyone's mind isn't on this. Hope everything goes smoothly, the young general prayed and stood up suddenly. I'll handle this. After driving for a while in the dark, Lu Qing remembered that the jeep might have a positioning device. He was about to find a way to change vehicles and interrogate the officer when he received a message from the Chinese military. Things are complicated. Evacuate as soon as possible. Follow the original 2 routes. There are still 4 tourists from our country in Tettans. If it's convenient, I hope you can bring them along. They are currently hiding in the ground floor car park of the Salagu supermarket. Chapter 594. Stepping on the officer, Lu Qing read the message to Yenjika. Before he could ask, Yenjika looked straight ahead and turned the steering wheel. Go. Huh? Lu Qing was confused. Don't you want to discuss whether to go or not with me? Yenjika drove the car fast in the middle of the night. My answer is yes. At this point, she pursed her lips and revealed a faint self-deprecating smile as she said, if the situation was dangerous, I definitely wouldn't agree to go. But now I can handle it. Isn't it natural to pick up a few people on the way and help my compatriots? I have you by my side and my strength is not bad. But when I encounter this kind of situation, I still feel panic, confusion, and fear. Although I slowly calm down, I can't be as rational as usual. Some of the words I said and some of the reactions I showed before became my unreasonable self that I don't like. I'm like this, let alone them. If I put myself in their shoes, they must be very scared, terrified, and uneasy at this time. They really want help and rescue. Sigh, I've always said that there's a difference between those who are close to me and those who are distant from me, and that I'm more indifferent to those who are further away from me. I can pity them, but I definitely won't worry about them. Ha, now it seems that I'm not that selfish after all. Lu Qing listened quietly, then chuckled and said, this is already very good. He pressed the keyboard and replied to the military personnel, I'll take them with me. After sending the message, he remembered his worries and hurriedly told Yenjika that the military jeep might have a positioning device so that she could prepare to change cars. In the middle of the night, without a key, can you open the door and drive the car? Yenjika asked. I can't. Lu Qing was almost speechless. I haven't learned this skill. In movies and TV series, there are often scenes of directly pulling the wires and connecting the ignition to start the car. But I haven't tried it and I don't know if it works. No wonder the seniors said that it's always good to have more skills in the martial arts world. At this time, Yenjika rolled her eyes and said, actually, the positioning device is easy to solve. My supernatural ability is similar to a magnetic field, so I can interfere with it. Will it also interfere with the driving of the car? Lu Qing deliberated and asked. I don't know about that. Yenjika was silent for a few seconds before she gave her opinion. Why don't you give it a try? Okay. Lu Qing was ready. After a while, the jeep was stable again. Yenjika said happily, no problem. That's good. Lu Qing wiped his non-existent cold sweat and began to use the army formula and his aura, trying to break the officer's defenses and get useful information from him. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will win every battle. After driving for a while, Yenjika said faintly, Qing, how do you get to that Shilagu? Lu Qing was stunned for a moment and found it hard to answer. After a few seconds of silence, he said with relief, I downloaded the map. In the corner of the underground parking lot of Saragu's supermarket, Ma Chaoyang hid in the shadows, using the support pillars as cover. He was a veteran backpacker and was currently on an experiential trip around Nile. Behind the SUV beside him was a family of 3. They set off from Dika and traveled all the way to Tettans. Due to the invasion of the hotel by the rebels, they took the opportunity to escape to a nearby area and met Ma Chaoyang. Under his suggestion, they hid in the parking lot and waited for the chaos to pass. What should we do? Will it be chaotic for a long time? Zhou Yong, a middle-aged man with a beer belly and a parted hairstyle, asked in a low voice. There was still a lingering panic in his voice. His wife, Li Xiaoyun, whose hair was in a mess, hugged her daughter, Zhou Xianying, who was only 11 or 12 years old. She kept looking left and right, afraid that the group of barbaric, vicious, and inhumane Nile soldiers would jump out from any corner. In the process of escaping from the hotel, if it weren't for a few rebels attracting attention, they wouldn't have escaped so smoothly. At the same time, they also witnessed the bloody scene of the rebels being beaten to death and injured. They also witnessed the tragic scene of a few ladies being pinned down and violated by the rebels. Born and raised in a normal and stable country, it was already good enough that they didn't break down after seeing such a scene. They only reacted a little too aggressively. Ma Chaoyang had passed by the border of the war-torn zones before and could be considered experienced. He shook his phone and said, "I've contacted the embassy. They said they will think of something. There will definitely be a way." Okay. Zhou Yong calmed down a little when he thought of having backup. At this moment, Ma Chaoyang's phone, which showed signs of disconnection from time to time, rang. There was a message. He looked down and a surprised smile appeared on his face. He blurted out, "The embassy has replied. They said that someone is coming to pick us up. We will retreat to Kukhang and meet up with the main force. They told us not to wander around and to wait here patiently." As he said these words, he couldn't help but tear up. It felt good to not be abandoned. It felt good to have someone to worry about and help. It was like being alone outside all year round. At the most difficult time, he suddenly received a call from his mother. Okay. Zhou Yong let out a long sigh, as if he had seen the light in the darkness and grabbed onto hope. He turned to his wife and daughter and said, "Don't be afraid. The embassy has sent someone over. It will be fine." Okay. Li Xiaoyun and Zhou Xianying nodded in unison, as if they had found their backbone. The waiting time was equally unbearable. They didn't dare to move, so they could only look at their watches and change their posture. It was as if they had lice. Why aren't they here yet? Li Xiaoyun couldn't help but mutter in the quiet underground parking lot. It's chaotic outside. They won't be here so soon. Ma Chaoyang was also anxious, but he still replied to calm the atmosphere and comfort himself. At this moment, the elevator in the distance arrived and a few footsteps were heard. "They're here." Zhou Xianying exclaimed in surprise, but her father covered her mouth. Zhou Yong shook his head at her with lingering fear, indicating that they should wait a little longer. Earlier in the hotel, some tourists thought that the police had arrived and rushed out excitedly, but they were caught by the rebels. As for the outcome, it was not hard to imagine. Tap, tap, tap. The heavy footsteps drew closer and a voice spoke in unfamiliar English. "Where is your car?" "In front." "It's right in front." "Most of my money and jewelry are there," a low female voice answered in a panic. Ma Chaoyang, Zhou Yong, and the others' hearts sank. They instinctively curled up into a ball, trying to hide as much as possible. Through the windshields on the opposite side, they could vaguely see 4 people dressed in rebel uniforms escorting a pretty white woman to the side of a crimson sedan. One of them seemed to be the leader. He stood alone by the side, while the other escorts occasionally rubbed the white woman's chest and lower body. In the compartment in front of the passenger seat, the white woman pointed at the crimson sedan with her chin. A rebel soldier took out the car key and pressed it, unlocking the door. Then, he went around the sedan and opened the door, trying to take something out of the compartment. The soldier who seemed to be the leader moved closer to the sedan to prevent his subordinates from taking the opportunity to hide the valuables. The rest of the escorts couldn't help but look at the opposite side. Seeing this, the white woman suddenly moved. She stomped her right foot to the side and pressed the tip of a soldier's foot. At the same time, she half-squatted and swung her left elbow backward, hitting another soldier in the crotch. Ouch! Ouch! One of the soldiers hugged his foot while the other covered his crotch, forgetting to shoot. The white woman immediately turned around and ran quickly, trying to escape. Bang! 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 After a few gunshots, she stopped and fell to the ground. The back of her head was blown open by the bullets. Red and white blood flowed all over the ground, accompanied by the victim's normal incontinence. The soldier who was the leader blew on the front end of the large-caliber pistol like he did in foreign movies. He was very pleased with himself. He had received formal training and was a rare sharpshooter in the tribe. At this time, Zhou Yong covered the mouths of his wife and daughter tightly, his face full of horror. The scene just now almost made him cry out involuntarily. No! The soldier who was searching the sedan raised his head in frustration. That bitch! He looked at the dead white woman and muttered softly, "What a pity." The leader's face darkened as he waited for his two injured subordinates to recover. To Ma Chaoyang, Zhou Yong, Li Xiaoyun, and Zhou Xianying, these few short minutes felt like years. They practically counted every second that passed, and even the sound of their breathing became soft, afraid that they would be discovered if they were just a little bit louder. After a while, except for the soldier whose crotch was injured, the rest of the rebel soldiers began to smash the windows of the surrounding cars. They searched for anything left inside, causing waves of alarms to ring. Perhaps they were tired, or perhaps they felt that this was not a big gain and that they might as well rob other places. The group of soldiers left the parking lot not long after, leaving behind a silence filled with the smell of blood. Ma Chaoyang and Zhou Yong looked at each other, exhaled, and collapsed. They did not know when this nightmare would end. At this time, they heard the familiar Hua Nation language, and they heard standard Mandarin. Ma Chaoyang. Zhou Yong. The people from the embassy are here. Is the rescue team here? Ma Chaoyang and the others jumped up and ran out. At this moment, the Hua Nation language that they used to find so ordinary was like the sound of nature from the light, so intimate and so pleasant to the ears. When they came out of the hiding place, they saw a couple. They were very young and looked more like a college couple. The girl was beautiful and elegant, like a light source in the darkness. The young man was chiseled and calm. Although he was not a soldier, the latter had a calming and comforting power. Zhou Yong, Li Xiaoyun, and the others felt like they had just escaped death. They instinctively said, "You." Lu Qing interrupted them and said with a smile, "We are from the military. We came here according to the embassy's instructions. Don't waste any more time. Get out of here as soon as possible." Hearing this, Ma Chaoyang and the others could no longer hold it in. Their vision blurred. P.S. Zhou Yong, please recommend me. Damn, I'm allergic. The punctual update record I've maintained for several days is gone. Chapter 595. Lu Qing didn't waste any time and asked directly, "Do you have a car?" With so many people, it would be troublesome to squeeze into a single jeep. No. Ma Chaoyang wiped his eyes and shook his head. He was a typical backpacker who liked to hitchhike and ride with the wind. Our rented car is at the hotel. It's chaotic there, very chaotic. Zhou Yong explained with lingering fear. Before he could finish, Zhou Xianying pointed into the distance and said with a sharp voice, "There's a car there. The keys are on the ground, on the ground." She was talking about the crimson car whose owner had been killed by the soldiers. Lu Qing glanced over and saw the corpse and the half-opened car door. He immediately understood what was going on. He didn't say anything more and changed the topic. "Which one of you knows how to drive?" "Me." Zhou Yong swallowed his saliva and raised his hand. "Me too." Ma Chaoyang occasionally went on road trips. Lu Qing nodded. Just as he was about to let them take turns driving the crimson car, he suddenly had an idea. He deliberated for a few seconds and looked at Yan Zhika beside him. "Cool, let's change cars. That jeep is for military use and is too eye-catching. It's easy to be spotted by drones and the like. Besides, maintaining your supernatural ability will consume a lot of energy. No one knows what will happen next. It's better to preserve as much strength as possible." He didn't say this behind Zhou Yong's back so that they could quickly understand the situation and not make stupid mistakes because they thought they were safe now. "Yeah, that's what I thought too." Yenjika's eyes turned up. Let's all squeeze into one car. We can barely fit in now. One car is more flexible and we won't have to wait for this and that and waste time for nothing. Okay. Lu Qing nodded in agreement and ordered Ma Chaoyang and the others to get in first. He himself returned to the jeep and knocked out the officer who had nearly lost control of his bladder. This seemingly cold guy had already broken down under the continuous assault of Lu Cheng's army formula and his own aura. He told them everything he knew. He belonged to the local government forces and didn't betray them. He was assigned by his superior to lead his direct troops to the hotel to hunt down foreign tourists. Regarding this mission, the instructions he received were, don't worry about international repercussions. Shoot when you need to shoot, kill when you need to kill. Both Lu Cheng and Yenjika could smell the strangeness of the car, so it was natural for them to change cars. No matter what Nile is up to, the most important thing is for us to safely evacuate. After he was done here, Lu Cheng came to the crimson sedan. He saw Zhou Yong, Ma Chaoyang, Li Xiaoyun, and Zhou Xianying were all tactfully squeezed in the back row. No one dared to go to the front. The scare and ordeal just now had made them dumbstruck and obedient like quails. The little girl was sitting on her mother's lap on the far left. Zhou Yong was in the middle and Ma Chaoyang was on the right. Yenjika had already gotten the key and started the car. Lu Cheng glanced around, picked up 2 shells and sat in the passenger seat. After he put down his backpack, Yenjika glanced at the map on her phone and said, from here, we can go north to Route 76. It goes all the way to Kukhang. It's the shortest and best route for us to retreat to. However, I'm worried that too many people will take this route and will be intercepted or robbed by a large force. I want to take a detour and take Route 63 to the east. After leaving the city, turn to Route 92 and enter Route 76 at Pori town. That's already quite far from Teton City, so there shouldn't be any problems. If we receive any bad news on the way, we can still easily turn from Route 92 to Route 71 and head to the port city of Fartuat at the edge of the Sea of Death. While driving here, she had already thought about the route of retreat. Lu Cheng thought for a moment and gave her a thumbs up. Not bad. Let's do that. Yenjika, who was praised, felt more confident and calm. She drove the car smoothly on a dark and narrow road without any streetlights. The surrounding buildings were sometimes tall and sometimes short. Occasionally, gunshots could be heard. Sometimes, flames could be seen. It made one feel the existence of chaos and the beauty of peace from the bottom of their heart. There weren't many cars on Route 63. The girl, who couldn't help but exceed the speed limit, put her skills to good use. It was as though she was driving a crimson bolt of lightning. Lu Cheng glanced at the rearview mirror and saw quite a few cars following them. These were some of the foreign tourists in the hotel. In times of crisis, they chose to follow the strong because the embassies and consulates couldn't take care of them for the time being. In times of chaos, this was the instinct of living things. They've become a motorcade. Yenjika also looked into the mirror and said with a smile and a sigh. I don't have a choice. I can't just go down and release a blast of Emperor Yen force to stop them from following us, right? Lu Cheng sighed as he rolled the bullet shell he picked up earlier between his fingers. He couldn't be that cold and heartless. He didn't have the heart of stone. It's nothing. It's only a 3-hour drive to Kukhang. That's a big city. There will be aid from their country there, said the girl calmly as she looked straight at the road. Just as she was about to drive out of Tetons, an obstacle suddenly appeared in front of them. A team of soldiers was setting up checkpoints to check. What should we do? Asked Yenjika instinctively. Li Xiaoyun and the rest in the back suddenly tensed up. Lu Cheng said with his usual expression, roll down the window. Don't stop. Charge through. Okay. After Yenjika rolled down the windows on both sides, she stepped on the accelerator pedal to the maximum, making the car let out a loud thud. Viroom. The car was like an arrow released from a bow and approached the checkpoint with a whoosh. The group of soldiers panicked at first, then raised their guns. Lu Qing extended his right hand out of the window and rubbed his index and middle fingers together. The bright yellow bullet shell immediately flew out. It was so fast that it looked like it had just left the barrel of a gun and created dazzling sparks. Bam! The bullet shell penetrated the forehead of a soldier and exploded with a boom. It was as though a cannon had struck this place. Countless bones flew out along with the red light. The rest of the people were screaming in pain. They covered their heads and scurried away like rats, showing the true colors of an unorganized and untrained rebel army. Kacha! The car crashed through the railing and wanted to speed through. An officer calmed himself down and took the opportunity to shoot at the driver's seat. With a casual flick of his left wrist, another shell flew out. This time, it was faster and more urgent than the previous one. Boom! The officer was instantly enveloped in red flames. His badly damaged body scattered around. The crimson car rushed through the checkpoint and drove into the long road of yellow sand, followed by one car after another. The team that had lost their officer retreated back to the base in a sorry state. They saw their superior's superior, Brigadier General Ferrio. This young man with eyes as blue as the ocean and a face full of mature facial hair led the guards. With his hands behind his back, he patrolled the front of the defeated soldiers. "Sir General, this is what happened." The adjutant of the defeated team stepped forward and finished his report. Ferrio nodded slightly. He took a few steps without commenting, then turned and walked towards the helicopter not far away. Halfway through the journey, he nonchalantly instructed the guards, "Don't worry. They killed international friends, which is a serious violation of the law of war and trampled on humanity. Execute them all." "Yes, Sir General." The captain of the guards saluted. "No. Spare us." The group of defeated soldiers came to their senses. Screams and sounds of machine gun fire filled the air. Ferrio straightened his back and got on the helicopter. He clenched his fist and said, "Let Tomu fly to Route 71. We will head to Bori Town and wipe out that accident completely." "Yes, sir." The captain of the guards replied loudly. The crimson car sped through the sky. The outline of the town was faintly discernible. "We're almost there," Li Xiaoyun said happily. They would leave the dark city of Tetons after this. A few more minutes. Ma Chaoyang stretched his neck and realized that his phone had some signal again. He quickly refreshed the message. "The situation in Dika is out of control. The rebel army is looting and the government army has started to take on the role of bandits. They killed many tourists. A new superhero has appeared." Ma Chaoyang read out the situation from last night. "Superhero?" Lu Qing asked in confusion. "Isn't that an American trait?" Ma Chaoyang explained, "It seems that an American tourist was brutally murdered, and this angered a strong man who was traveling in Nile. He took revenge on the government and the rebel army in the form of a superhero. He killed one of their generals, the real generals, Kafir and Mutheo. He called himself Dark Knight Bat." "General? The real generals?" Lu Cheng and Yan Zhika looked at each other, their eyes filled with shock and astonishment. Excluding the promotion of the command system, in Nile, general was synonymous with terror grade and physical invulnerability grade. Judging from Ma Chaoyang's tone, he was obviously referring to the latter. 2 physical invulnerability experts had fallen. In just one night, the coup had led to the fall of 2 physical invulnerability experts. In a one-on-one fight between physical invulnerability experts, it was easy to win, but difficult to kill. Was that Dark Knight Bat a taboo-level superhero? Or was he not the only one? Moreover, why would the 2 parties involved in the coup provoke foreigners for no reason? Why was the situation so out of control? Was military discipline completely disrupted? The development of this matter was getting weirder and more exaggerated. "We have to evacuate as soon as possible." Lu Cheng and Yan Zhika understood each other's eyes. One sped up the car while the other observed the surroundings. Vroom vroom vroom. The family car was driven like a supercar and flew into the town. There were checkpoints set up by soldiers at the front and a helicopter hovered above. Lu Cheng's eyelids twitched. His instincts told him that there was going to be big trouble. Turn around. No, wait a while more, he said calmly. After a dozen seconds, an off-road vehicle in front of them charged towards the checkpoint, taking advantage of its heavy weight. Amidst the sounds of gunfire, it broke through the barrier. Suddenly, a rocket flew through the air and hit the off-road vehicle with a bang. Boom! The violent explosion stopped the following vehicles in their tracks. Flames billowed like mushrooms. In the helicopter, Ferrio held a cigar and watched the scene leisurely. His military uniform was neat and tidy. Cars turned around frantically. Only then did Yen Zhika move. She blended in with the crowd and didn't attract any attention. At this moment, another beam of fire shot out from the helicopter and hit the back, causing another loud sound and intense fireworks. Everyone, stop your vehicles and be checked one by one, the officer guarding the checkpoint shouted with a loudspeaker. P.S. Looking for recommendation votes. Chapter 596. In the helicopter, Ferrio took a puff of his cigar. He was satisfied to see all the cars stop under the deterrence of the rocket. At this time, his adjutant received a message through a special communication device. He quickly reported, found Cacho. He was abandoned in the underground parking lot of Saragu supermarket. He has a mental breakdown and keeps saying things like, I'm a government soldier. He should have told them everything he knows. Get rid of him. Ferrio raised his right hand and made a throat-slitting gesture. What about Cacho's superior, Markdom, who gave him the order? The adjutant asked cautiously. Ferrio glanced at him coldly. Same. Yes, General. The adjutant didn't say anything else and quickly made the arrangements. When the call ended, he spoke again, full of doubts. Lu must know that this was done by the government army. Although the signal was intermittent, it was still there. The secret should have been leaked. If we kill him now, not only will we not solve the problem, but we will also be suspected and get into big trouble. Ferrio raised his eyelids slightly and looked around at his trusted subordinates. Didn't I tell you the real goal this time? No. The adjutant shook his head. The adjutant shook his head and replied, there's a saying in our tribe that those who don't know anything live longer. Ferrio looked down and saw that a portion of the soldiers at the checkpoint were methodically searching the cars in the queue. Although they still took the belongings, they were more restrained. They also didn't make things difficult for the men and women who passed the checkpoint, allowing them to drive to Kukhang. This calmed the hearts of the fugitives, and they all had the idea of spending money to avoid disaster. The government sent a regular army to hold foreign tourists hostage. They don't prohibit killing, and they intend to silence them and frame the rebels. This is what Cacho knows and can be inferred, right? Ferrio leisurely put the cigar to his mouth. Yes, so we shouldn't find trouble with Lu anymore. We can just push the blame to Markdom and say that he has secretly defected to the rebels and intends to use this method to slander the government, the adjutant replied after thinking. Then why did I kill Cacho and his soldiers? Wouldn't it be better to keep them alive? Ferrio revealed a faint smile. Think about it. What if the government really intends to frame the rebels? Under this premise, what will you do when something unexpected happens and the secret might be leaked? The adjutant's expression turned solemn. We will kill all the participants and insiders and push the blame to the rebels. This is the most direct and easiest way to think of. However, once there are omissions, such as Lu's existence, Cacho's confession, and the maintenance of communication, things will become troublesome. We can only find a scapegoat internally. Having said that, he looked at Ferrio in shock. Sir General, who is our target? Have you joined the rebels? No, in this turmoil, there are no rebels or government forces. There is only the difference between those who are loyal to the pharaoh and those who are against him. Ferrio paused. Our target is Satha. General Satha. The adjutant was shocked, and cold sweat instantly appeared on his forehead. This was one of the leaders of the Brotherhood, a figure with real power in the Kukang area, and the brigadier general's immediate superior. He was a member of the regular army. I am General Satha's subordinate. Everything I do is under his orders. Fario joked, which was rare for him. Originally, I was going to hold the hostages and wait for help to arrive before causing trouble and giving General Satha an unforgettable memory. At first, I was very angry because I thought that if things were to blow up prematurely, Satha would be alerted. But now, it seems that Lu Cheng's accident isn't necessarily a bad thing. If we can attract China's revenge and mighty ones to kill us, it seems even more perfect than the original plan. Over 100 demigods, that's a country so powerful that it makes people tremble. The adjutant was enlightened, and he spoke with some concern. But General, you will also be in great danger. If we make a move directly, they will definitely retaliate. Do we only rely on this armed helicopter? With the current ammunition reserves, I'm afraid it will be difficult to kill Lu Cheng, or even hurt him. At his level, his mobility is too high, and his speed is terrifyingly fast. Don't worry, he will be a burden, Fario replied calmly. He rubbed his face, causing the large patches of beard to fall off. Immediately after, his sea blue eyes turned dark red. His nose was slightly sunken, his forehead was slightly protruding, and his cheeks were drooping. Although the individual changes weren't big, when put together, it was as if he had become a different person. Look, I'm not Fario. I'm Zayed, he said with a slight smile. Zayed was General Satha's confidant and was slightly weaker than Fario. The adjutant lowered his head even more, his heart filled with fear and uneasiness. After knowing so many secrets, it was normal for him to be afraid of being silenced. Don't worry, I still need your help. Later, if anyone dares to stop to take photos or videos, shoot them with a rocket. After doing this, you will be on the same level as me, Fario said, both commanding and comforting. Then, his expression turned solemn. For the Pharaoh. For the Pharaoh. The adjutant and the others shouted in unison, all of them fanatical. At this moment, Fario half closed his eyes and muttered to himself with an intoxicated expression, at this juncture, encountering such an opponent, it really seems like a deliberate arrangement by the gods. This is both a test and an opportunity. I can already imagine the satisfaction, joy, and carefreeness after killing Lu Cheng. This will allow me to take that final step and become a true demigod. If I can't defeat and kill Lu Cheng while he's burdened, helpless, and restrained by the armed helicopters, then that means I deserve to die. This lunatic. This sick guy. The adjutant cursed in his heart. He wasn't sure if Brigadier General Fario was doing this for the Pharaoh, for himself, or for both. After a few seconds, Fario opened his eyes again. He looked down and said with dissatisfaction, "They're too slow." "Lower the helicopter," he ordered, then got up and walked to the side of the cabin door. When the helicopter was within 15 meters, Fario's eyes flashed. He pressed out with his right palm, and the surroundings suddenly turned dark. It was as though a sandstorm was about to hit Oasis Town. The darkness moved slowly, sweeping across one car after another. The heat, activity, and other characteristics of the creatures inside appeared vaguely in Fario's mind. As long as Lu Cheng didn't control his breathing, heartbeat, and aura, he would be like a torch in the night, bright and eye-catching. At this moment, in the dark lake of Fario's heart, a burning sensation like the sun shone, tearing apart all the haze and illuminating all the darkness. Found him. Fario squinted his eyes and said to himself happily. In the crimson car, Yanjika found that the soldiers at the checkpoint ahead weren't like the soldiers in the city who would kill and humiliate indiscriminately. Other than taking some belongings, they would follow the rules and let them go after inspection. They seemed to be looking for someone. The girl observed for a while and speculated. If it involved herself, it would be even more dangerous. This is the government army, Lu Cheng concluded. He thought of Officer Cacho, whom he had captured last night, and had a bad feeling about the inspection. As soon as he finished speaking, a cold and evil feeling swept across his body. The strong sense of danger made him shout without thinking, "Turn left. Hit the gas." Yenjika didn't understand, but she instinctively believed in Lu Cheng and his anxious tone. She hurriedly released the brake and stepped on the gas pedal to its limit. At the same time, she turned the steering wheel to the left. Almost no thoughts flashed through her mind during the entire process. With a roaring sound, the car left the engine and sped to the side, entering the muddy ground of the oasis. Bang! At this time, the armed helicopter fired a missile at the place where the car was originally parked. Boom! The strong explosion shook the surrounding glass and overturned the cars in front and behind. Flames and smoke billowed. "Speed up and go around the checkpoint." Lu Cheng's heart was as cold as ice as he calmly ordered. Yenjika sped up without hesitation, running towards the checkpoint on the bumpy ground of the oasis. "Brake. Turn right." Lu Cheng looked around and predicted. Whoosh! The crimson car stopped and turned, approaching the original road. Two rockets, one on the left and one on the right, completed the coverage. Rumble! The violent explosion woke up the others. The escapees no longer cared about anything else and rushed towards the checkpoint in all kinds of ways. The scene became extremely chaotic. Pretty nimble. In the helicopter, Ferio faintly smiled. Holding his unfinished cigar, he leaped down and gracefully landed on top of a car from a height of more than 10 meters. His landing created a huge depression, but he didn't shake or sway. He strode forward, using his own mobility to intercept the relatively heavy crimson car. He was trying to block the route so that it would be distracted by one thing and be hit sooner or later. Seeing the red-eyed man in the military uniform getting closer and closer, Lu Cheng's mind was filled with thoughts. He already had a plan. He sent a voice transmission to Yenjika, "I'll stop him. You continue to rush through the checkpoint. If you can't dodge, immediately abandon the car and save yourself. Don't worry about anything else." With Ku's strength and mobility, she wouldn't be hit so easily unless they formed a net of fire. And it was very difficult for an armed helicopter to do so. Okay. At this critical juncture, Yenjika didn't waste time. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Lu Cheng suddenly pushed open the car door and rolled out through the gap. With a push of his hand, he leaped and crossed a distance of more than 10 to 20 meters to where Ferio was. Duh. 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 The machine gun fired, hitting the air and leaving a row of bullet holes in the ground. Ferio threw away the cigar in his hand, smiled at Lu Cheng, and said in perfect English, "Tell me, will you die first, or will they?" Chapter 597. Lu Cheng had no intention of wasting time with Ferio. Yenjika was in danger. To him, every moment was precious. He had to seize every second. The car's speed and mobility couldn't compare to that of an inhuman stage expert. Once faced with such an enemy, there was no way to shake them off or go around them. At such a time, if he was still overcautious and worried about this and that, hesitating to stay in the car, it would be tantamount to sitting and waiting for death. He would be a burden to the people he wanted to protect. Lu Cheng had made full use of this in 2 previous missions. He knew this very well. Therefore, when he saw the man in the red uniform approaching, he made a prompt decision to jump out of the car and meet the enemy. As for whether there were other enemies, it was no longer a consideration. If he couldn't even get past this obstacle, what was the point of thinking about anything else? Of course, Lu Cheng had also thought of a response to the worst-case scenario. He reminded Ferio that if Yenjika was attacked by a strong enemy or was in a situation where she couldn't avoid, she should abandon the car and ignore Zhou Yong and the rest. When the time came, he would protect her and do his best to open a bloody path to retreat into the desert. He would use his inhuman speed and ability to cross mountains to seek hope. Bam! Before Ferio could finish his words, Lu Cheng had already pounced forward. He extended his right leg and stomped on the ground. Strength poured into it, and with a flip of the plow, he kicked up a sky full of dirt. Pieces of gold-like rock shot towards his opponent's body like arrows. Whoosh! Between stomps and flicks, he changed his position like a ghost and suddenly arrived at his opponent's flank. He gathered his chi and blood at his lower abdomen, and the ice and fire rotated, forming a Dan in equilibrium. In that instant, Ferrio's face turned ashen, as though he had been dead for a long time. His entire body had turned into a mummified corpse. He raised his left hand to block his eyes, ignoring the other attacks. He allowed the dirt arrows to hit his body, tearing his clothes, splitting his skin, and opening up his muscles. However, all he saw was a grayish-white color, and not a single drop of blood flowed out. Beneath his feet, the moist soil of the oasis dried up in an instant, gathering into lumps and dispersing into sand. The surrounding plants withered one by one, as though their lives had been sucked away. A dim light shone from his feet, and an evil aura enveloped him. Ferrio half-turned his body and swung his fists from left to right. They were so heavy that they seemed to be burdened with hundreds of lives. He was wearing a light golden glove, and there were protrusions at the joints, as if they were bone spurs shining with a cold luster. This was the terrifying legacy of Nile's Nether King lineage, the judgment of withering. Once it hit the opponent, not only would it cause the opponent to retreat, it would also corrode the opponent's flesh and blood, causing them to wither. Before Lu Qing figured out who he was and what he was good at, Ferrio decided to go all out. He wanted to finish him off in a few moves to avoid any unexpected changes. If he could get rid of Lu Cheng's comrade before the armed helicopter got rid of him, it would definitely be an achievement worth bragging about. It would boost his confidence and allow him to take the final step to become a demigod. Bang! Ferrio swung his fist horizontally at Lu Cheng. He had risked injury just now to prevent his opponent from having a chance to dodge. On the other side, Yenjika, who was driving, looked straight ahead, observing the guards and the helicopters that appeared from time to time. Her ears were listening to the propellers. She couldn't make as accurate a judgment as Lu Cheng, so she could only take the initiative and constantly change directions irregularly to avoid the attacks. Rumble. Da-da-da. Rumble. The crimson sedan was like a swimming fish, swaying its head and tail in an exaggerated manner, advancing and retreating at times. Amidst the smoke and flames, it approached the checkpoint and tried to go around it. Yenjika's heart was very tense. She knew that it was dangerous to be completely passive. The slightest mistake would immediately result in a blow. Inexperienced, she could only imitate Lu Cheng, turning water into ice and telling herself to calm down, and calm down. Quietness begets wisdom, and wisdom begets wisdom. The girl, who was prone to minor illnesses and wasn't too afraid of death, quickly regained her rationality. Ridiculous and inflexible thoughts flashed through her mind. At this moment, Lu Cheng, who was in Dan equilibrium, was trying his best to hypnotize himself with words like, "Ku is a quasi-Dan stage, she'll definitely be fine," and so on. He placed his will at the apex of the universe and coldly looked down at the stars and darkness below. He moved quickly, and the resplendent heat outlined a fighting character that would never admit defeat and would fight its way into the 9 heavens. Boom! As Ferrio swung his fist of judgment, Lu Qing exploded his Dan force and expanded his body. Suddenly, in Ferrio's eyes, his opponent, who was less than 1.8 meters tall, transforming into a nearly 2-meter tall monster. His muscles were bulging, and his greenish-black fascias were frightening. He looked down at Ferrio like a giant from the legends. At the same time, Lu Cheng's eyes widened in anger. He swung his left fist to the side, breaking through the air barrier and sending it flying at the same time as the explosion. Force concentration superimposed on the fighting formula. Double burst, absolute attack. Shock flashed through Ferrio's eyes as he saw his fist collide with his opponent's. Rumble. It was as if there had been an explosion. Ferrio's dark golden gloves were dented and distorted. Ferrio's bones creaked, and Lu Cheng's skin lost its luster. His flesh became shriveled, and the strong wind blew up the surrounding sand and stones, creating a small sandstorm. At that moment, Pharaoh's eyes were filled with shock and fear. He felt that his opponent's strength was no less than a demigod's. It even exceeded their usual punches and kicks. It wasn't that Pharaoh hadn't fought a demigod before. He'd lasted a full 10 seconds, but that was because his opponent had shown restraint, and because he had a choice in his fighting style. How could he face a demigod head-on? *T. Boundless divine power surged. Pharaoh swung his right arm, and his body shot backward like a bolt of lightning to neutralize the force and prevent fractures and imbalances from occurring at the same time. Lu Qing didn't care about the withered area. Circulating his qi and blood, he stimulated his body and took a step forward. It was as if the ground had shrunk, and he closed in on his opponent again, not giving him a chance to regroup. Another hug, another resplendent star shift. Lu Qing took a step forward with his left foot and swung his arm like a whip. He was a dozen centimeters taller and twice as strong. His large tendons were like serpents, coiling, pulsating, and knotting. They stirred up the sound of the wind, displaying impressive strength. No fire, no ice, the purest form. Double burst, double combo. Rumble. It was as if a high-speed fighter jet was flying between them. Lu Cheng's whip left behind afterimages as it lashed down in front of his opponent, who couldn't dodge in time. Pharaoh instantly turned into a mummified corpse. Raising his heavy arm, he hurriedly blocked with his fist with the strength of the underworld. Bam! This whip caused sparks to fly in all directions. It caused the gloves to crack, and it caused Pharaoh's arms to distort in an abnormal manner. It caused his feet to sink into the ground up to his ankles, and it caused the enemy to pause momentarily. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Lu Qing took a deep breath, retracted his qi and blood, and returned to the ice and fire embrace, outlining the fighting formula. With a boom, countless capillaries in his eyes burst. His bloodshot eyes locked onto his opponent. His anger from being targeted for no reason and putting his little fairy in such a dangerous situation boiled over. Double burst, third strike. Bam! Lu Qing pushed his shoulder and swung his arm. His shriveled fist was used as a weapon, and he threw it at Pharaoh's abdomen. Pharaoh's feet had just retracted when he could only turn into a mummified corpse again. Gritting his teeth, he reached down and grabbed at his opponent's fist. Rumble. Lu Cheng's fist pushed against Pharaoh's palm and smashed into his abdomen. The punch pierced through his clothes and muscles, leaving behind a gaping hole where one could see his intestines but no blood flowed out. As an expert who had been on the battlefield for a long time, Pharaoh didn't care about such a small injury. The soil under his feet quickly eroded, and a dark light flashed in his eyes. He was about to counterattack. At that moment, Lu Qing used his shriveled fist from the realm of all-seeing God to grab Pharaoh's hand at his abdomen. With a violent shake, his opponent's joints cracked, and the foreign force he had gathered dissipated. His muscles were weak, and he was like a subdued cobra. Darkness appeared in Lu Cheng's mind, cold and deep. With the sound of thunder, Lu Qing pulled his opponent's shoulder and threw out another punch. White fog swirled around him, and frost filled the air. Severe warning. Not good. Pharaoh's hair stood on end. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of illusory, pitch-black blood at Lu Cheng's face. The smell of blood spread in all directions, and it was nauseating. He wanted to force his enemy to dodge, neutralize the danger, and gain the upper hand. At that moment, Lu Qing didn't move his body or his feet. He merely tilted his face to the left, avoiding eye contact. Bam! His fist landed on Pharaoh's shoulder, causing his bones to cave in and ash to scatter everywhere. Sizzle! Half of his face was stained with black liquid and corroded. It was a hideous and terrifying sight. Pharaoh's eyes were unfocused, as though he had fallen into a long slumber. Lu Cheng's other arm shook, and with a smack, it landed on the stunned enemy's head. Bam! Pharaoh's head exploded. Fragments and bits of red and white flew everywhere, and no one could find anything that was still intact. He didn't even leave behind a trace of regret or fear. Lu Qing didn't even look at him. He turned around abruptly, picked up a rock, and held it in his palm. Imbuing it with flame force, he took large strides using the simplified attainment formula and threw it at the helicopter in midair. Boom! The rock flew like a rocket, covering a distance of several hundred meters. Behind Lu Qing, the headless Fario fell to the ground. Chapter 598. On the helicopter, Fario's adjutant watched the battle unfold while ordering the pilot to lower the altitude to give the Crimson Sedan more pressure and a more saturated attack. He wanted to end the battle as soon as possible. Boom! Da-da-da! Missiles exploded and machine guns rained down. The eagle chased after the prey that had suddenly stopped and turned around. Victory was getting closer and closer. At this moment, Fario's adjutant suddenly shouted. His tone was full of panic and fear, as if he had seen something unbelievable. Quick! Dodge! Rise! Immediately after, his voice became sharp as he gave orders in short and hurried words. It was as if he had seen the monster, death, approaching. The pilot instinctively obeyed. Just as he was about to operate the helicopter, he found that the digital dashboard had become chaotic. He lost control of the helicopter for a moment and stopped in place. No! A beam of white light shot out like a missile. The adjutant's scream of fear and despair was suddenly swallowed up by the violent sound. A red, high-temperature firework bloomed in midair. Its tongue spread out and engulfed every corner of the cabin. Boom! The black helicopter exploded for the second time. A bright light leaped out from the fuel tank. A huge, burning ball of light illuminated Yan Zhika's vision. It suddenly fell to the ground not far from the left side of the sedan. Fragments scattered everywhere as it completely disintegrated. This made the girl, who had used her supernatural ability to interfere with the operation of the helicopter's precision instruments, open her mouth in shock. Her neat white teeth were half open, and her delicate tongue was faintly discernible. After she regained her rationality and grasped the idea, she had been waiting for an opportunity. Waiting for the Black Eagle to lower its altitude again and enter the range of her supernatural ability. Running away without counterattacking would cause problems sooner or later. Zhou Xianying also saw this scene through the window. She felt like she was watching a war movie in a movie theater. Ma Chaoyang, Zhou Yong, and the rest immediately looked over. They were shocked and forgot to rejoice. Yan Zhika's mind was shaken. She didn't make a mistake in her imagination. Instinctively, she turned the steering wheel and stepped on the accelerator. Once again, they were far away from the checkpoint and avoided the soldiers' gunfire. Suddenly, she felt the undulation of the vehicle and the shaking of the earth. It seemed like there was a herd of wild elephants chasing after them. The small army diagonally in front of them, which had been attacking in a disciplined manner, scattered and fled in panic. There was a limit to a person's courage. There were very few troops that could not break down in a crisis. Thump! Thump! Clear and deafening footsteps sounded. Lu Qing in his martial arts suit appeared on the right side of the car. He slowed down, opened the door, and sat in the car again. Are you all right? Yan Zhika blurted out. It's just a small wound. Lu Qing felt a burning pain on the right side of his face. He knew that the wound was hideous enough to frighten the girls in the back row. In the situation just now, his mind was filled with thoughts of killing his opponent at all costs. In the face of such a powerful enemy, the slightest hesitation or concession would result in a reversal of the situation. At that time, not only would he be in danger, but he would also delay the rescue of Ku. Because of this, he had prepared severe warning and could not divert his attention to use ice armor, so he did not retreat in the face of danger and exchanged injuries for victory. Of course, this was also due to the fact that he was able to accurately judge the enemy's attacks under the realm of encountering gods in the void. That's good. Yan Zhika heaved a sigh of relief and turned the car onto the road. "Let me heal my wounds first," Lu Cheng said as he visualized. He formed a seal with his hands and exhaled. Confrontation. Tranquility descended. Mysteriously, Lu Cheng's blood flowed into his right fist again, nourishing the withered muscles. Under the frenzied metabolism, it slowly but surely healed itself. However, after shaking off the black liquid, the corroded right side of his face healed rather slowly. It even caused him to feel feverish on his forehead and slight dizziness in his head. Poison. A very strange poison. The thought flashed through Lu Cheng's mind as he made up his mind. He quickly made a force concentration and gathered ice, fire, mind, chi, blood, and poison in his lower abdomen. A starry sky appeared, rotating and balancing. He placed his consciousness at the apex of the universe. Relying on his superior control, he gathered the poison bit by bit, sending it through the absolute cold darkness. Slowly, it showed signs of freezing and deactivation. In no time, the poison approached the nearest star. It sizzled, burned, and evaporated into gas. Boom! With the explosion of his Dan force, Lu Cheng rolled down the car window and spat out a jet of black gas, dispersing it into the natural world. This healing method was unique to him. Confrontation. Lu Cheng exhaled again. The corroded skin and flesh on his face fell off, revealing a squirming scarlet that quickly formed a scar. It was still hideous, but much better than before. In another 10 to 20 minutes, the scar would fall off. With the help of his superior self-healing ability and the confrontation formula, the remaining scars would vanish completely in less than 3 days. No need to play ghost. He laughed, drawing Yenjika's puzzled gaze. Unfortunately, she could only see the left side of his face. Disfigured? Yenjika's eyes darted upwards as she made a guess based on the words, playing ghost. She wasn't worried about the outcome. Cheng could even remove old scars, let alone new ones. This was truly an ability that he was envious of. It was a pity that it required the realm of all-seeing God and the confrontation formula. In a moment of desperation, Lu Cheng answered succinctly. With that, he looked at the road ahead, at the occasional abandoned car by the roadside due to forgetting to refuel. He sighed softly. I thought an opponent like that could force me to make a breakthrough. Unfortunately, all it did was add some experience to the deathmatch. In the back row, Zhou Yong, Ma Chaoyang, and the rest fell silent. They weren't martial arts enthusiasts, so they couldn't tell Ferrio's level of strength. However, they had a deep understanding of how terrifying a fully equipped armed helicopter was from television, daily life, and the experience of being hunted down. One could only imagine how terrifying someone who could destroy such a thing so effortlessly was. After hearing Lu Cheng's exclamation, Yenjika pursed her lips and comforted him. Perhaps you have to walk your own path. External forces are useless. Following that, she changed the topic. Cheng, I feel that my supernatural ability is similar to a magnetic field. It's quite useful against high-tech and high-precision things, yes. Lu Cheng agreed. As he spoke, he replayed everything that had happened in his mind. Suddenly, he said, Cuckoo, stop the car. What's wrong? Yenjika stepped on the pedals slowly and brought the car to a steady stop. And Mighty One close to physical invulnerability attacked us out of the blue. This is very strange. I'm afraid there will be more trouble in the future. Lu Cheng couldn't understand why someone would come after him when he had already reported the situation to the military. Was it a misunderstanding, a chance encounter, or something else? To prevent the worst from happening, he made a prompt decision. He turned to Ma Chaoyang, Zhou Yong, and the rest and said, My girlfriend and I seem to have become targets. You guys will be in more danger if you follow us. Why don't we split up now? You guys switch to another car and drive to Kukang. Now that there are refugees everywhere, you won't stand out if you blend in with them. When you get there, you won't enter the city, but you'll pass through the checkpoints. Follow the route I'll give you later. What about you guys? Zhou Yong and Ma Chaoyang asked in unison. We'll walk in the wilderness and over the mountains. This way, we'll be more mobile and less likely to be discovered. Lu Qing only described the method and didn't mention the actual destination. Thinking of the running ability they had shown, Li Xiaoyun and the rest fell silent. Then, they recalled the terrifying rocket attack and felt that it might be better to split up. Hence, they nodded and thanked him. Lu Qing immediately asked his wife to turn the car around and drive back to Bori town. He found a car that had lost its owner and had a key. Using Yan Zhika's supernatural ability, he extracted gasoline from the abandoned car and poured it into the car. When he tossed the key to Zhou Yong, he picked up a few weapons for them. He also asked a girl who was trained in shooting and hunting to teach them how to use them. Thank you, thank you. See you back in China. Ma Chaoyang and the rest waved goodbye and drove along the road to Kukang. Where are we going? Yan Zhika glanced around and asked sharply. Walking in the wilderness was a given, but where exactly? To Fartuat. When we get to Kukang, we still have to go to Dika before we can leave. I'm afraid of accidents. Fartuat is a little far and not suitable for Zhou Yong and the rest, but for us, if we take a straight line, it won't be too bad. Once we get there, there will be boats to help us evacuate, Lu Qing explained. Okay. Yan Zhika looked up and nodded. Then she added. My supernatural ability can also determine the direction like a compass, so I'm not afraid of getting lost. Since they were going to walk in the wilderness, the two gave up a portion of their luggage, leaving only the girls' shoulders to pack the most important items. After everything was done, Lu Qing notified the military while there was still signal. He carried Yan Zhika on his back and strode out of the oasis, moving faster than a speeding car. Along the way, he took care to hide his tracks. Kukang, inside the military base. General Satha, whose hair was wrapped up, received a report from Teton City. It said that Brigadier General Furio had failed to attack an Eastern Mighty One and was killed instead. Eastern Mighty One. Hua Nation. Furio. Satha narrowed his eyes as if he had understood something. He clenched his fist and growled, Pharaoh. After a few seconds, he called Zayed and asked him to gather the Brotherhood leaders in the military and put Kukang under martial law. Lu Qing carried Yan Zhika on his back. He ran and rested, sometimes in a straight line, sometimes in a roundabout way, sometimes in a dash, sometimes in hiding. After 5 hours, they finally smelled the damp seawater and saw the beautiful city in the distance. Fartuat. Throughout the whole process, the girl didn't speak much and didn't ask to move alone. She only stayed alert when Lu Qing rested and gave him water when he was thirsty so that he wouldn't waste his ice force. Every time she thought of hiding in the shadows of the sand dunes, watching out for each other, their bodies pressed against each other, she felt that there was no need for words. Their hearts were connected. Phew, we're almost liberated. Lu Qing looked at the city and laughed. Yan Zhika pursed her lips, revealing her dimples. It wasn't easy. After sighing, she tilted her head slightly and smiled sweetly. Qing, I have good news for you. What? Lu Qing asked in confusion. Ku has been on my back all this time and there was no signal. What good news could there be? After today's training, I feel like I can complete force concentration now. Yan Zhika raised her chin and announced proudly and expectantly. This would help Qing perfect his martial arts and find the path to physical invulnerability. This was something he had been waiting for a long time. P.S. Allergic dermatitis, patches of it on your body. Sigh. Chapter 599. Surprised and delighted, Lu Qing blurted out, really? His reaction made Yan Zhika feel very proud. She slightly tilted her head and snorted with her eyes twinkling. You still don't believe me? That's because I thought you would need at least 6 or 7 more days of training. Lu Qing didn't hide his surprise and delight. Heh, you underestimate me. Yan Zhika chuckled and then said thoughtfully, when I'm on the brink of death, my body and soul seem to be connected and become one. However, I still prefer a stable and peaceful life. Me too. We're not afraid of accidents, but we don't want to encounter them either. Lu Qing chimed in. Yenjika hid in the shadow of a sand dune. She looked at the scorching sun hanging high in the sky and said eagerly, "Shall I show you now or wait until we're in the city?" "Let's do it now," Lu Qing replied after some thought. Due to the interruption of communication, he didn't know much about the situation in the port city of Fartuat. He needed to rest and recover his strength to deal with any accidents. Since that was the case, he might as well take the opportunity to experience the changes in Yenjika's first dan of equilibrium and find the key to merging martial arts and cultivation. There might be surprises. Okay. Yenjika nodded solemnly. She drank the last mouthful of water and tossed the bottle aside. She got into her stance and visualized the confrontation formula. She reined in her body and mind and adjusted her spirit. Immediately after, Yenjika retracted her chi, blood, body force, and earth force, condensing them into a ball that spun wildly. Her willpower was like a millstone, constantly squeezing this small ball and shrinking it rapidly until it reached a certain limit. At this moment, she guided her spirit and caused the big dan to collapse and form a balance. The earth force was the star, and the chi force was the darkness. Lu Qing, who had already formed the ice mirror and placed his palm on Yenjika's shoulder, suddenly felt that the big dan of the human body at equilibrium was guiding the vibrations in her head. It created a miraculous and temporary resonance with the surroundings and the blue sky above. Resonance. A bolt of lightning flashed through the fog in Lu Cheng's mind, illuminating all the darkness and fuzziness. He found the commonality between the different cultivation methods and understood the point of blending cultivation and martial arts. Yes, resonance. The resonance between the human body and nature. Just like in the ordinary dan stage, the effect of force depended on the special waves produced by the body to create different effects. Physical invulnerability meant that one's body, mind, and spirit were integrated as one, resonating with the outside world and heaven and earth, creating a direct connection. Regardless of whether it was the prayer asceticism of the mission sect, the mass ceremony, or the depraved actions of the spirit cultivators that broke the fixed pattern, they were all for the sake of removing the shackles of the soul, guiding the changes in the spirit, and triggering a special frequency that would gradually strengthen and obtain feedback. Their purpose was to establish a connection with the heavenly master, the devil, and their own spirit, and to establish a channel. Judging from Ku's progress just now, this kind of resonance was not only related to the formation of the dan in equilibrium, but also involved the ethereal and indescribable spirit. It also involved the brain that produced this kind of wave. Even though modern technology was advanced, they still couldn't figure out 10 to 20% of the mystery of the brain. Back then, he also had a similar experience, but at that time, he was muddle-headed and didn't understand, so it didn't leave a deep impression on him. Lu Qing withdrew his right hand. He had a new understanding of the differences and similarities between cultivation and martial arts at this stage. The reason why cultivators could naturally connect to heaven and earth once they formed the Jin Dan was because their Jin Dan was a substantial product of highly condensed essence, chi, spirit, and will. It was in equilibrium as heaven and earth, corresponding to a certain prototype and resonating. Moreover, their spirit was completely integrated into it, so they could very easily and smoothly guide the changes in the special positions of the brain. Martial artists controlled the spirit with their will, and through visualization, they changed, polished, and improved it. It guided the movement of the organs and muscles, going deep into the details, causing the genes to mutate. Through force concentration, all these processes gradually formed a whole. When the root pulp and spirit resonated with the outside world and reached a certain level, the barrier would be broken and the connection would be formed. It seems that at this stage, when I reached the Dan in equilibrium, I could actually resonate with heaven and earth, which was a pseudo-physical invulnerability. However, this state wouldn't last long. Once it was dissolved, I would immediately fall back to the inhuman level. Lu Qing looked at Yenjika, who had opened her eyes, and praised sincerely, "You're now a Dan stage expert. And the kind with supernatural abilities." Yenjika seemed to have washed away the dullness of passing through the sand and became radiant again. Her eyebrows curved, and her dimples deepened. How about you? Did you comprehend anything? More or less. Lu Qing pretended to be calm and answered. He already had an idea of what to do next. He also understood why he couldn't make the great leap when he disintegrated the Jin Dan. Simply put, it was uncoordinated. The root pulp of the spirit was not in harmony with the actual state. He had reached the Dan in equilibrium, resonating with the outside world with the cosmic universe. When he usually visualized, he cultivated Emperor Yen and Ice Spirit. The two intertwined, each had their own force, and they mutated separately. In the end, he had to rely on the rotation of force concentration to forcefully form a whole, which was why they were separated. The most important thing now was to change the visualization diagram, fusing ice and fire into one from the source, and then guiding the spirit and root pulp to truly transform them into the cosmic universe. As for how to change the visualization diagram, of course, it was based on the heaven and earth of the Dan during force concentration. And when he reached the Dan in equilibrium, he could also adjust according to the resonance with the outside world, making the cosmic universe more complete and compatible. You've thought it through. Yenjika's eyes lit up with surprise and asked instinctively. Does this mean Cheng is about to make the great leap? Yes. Next, we can think of various ways to try to break through to the physical invulnerability stage. Lu Qing suddenly gave her a thumbs up and smiled. Indeed, I still have to rely on you, Coach Yen. Of course, the girl pursed her lips and raised her head happily and proudly. I'm the pillar of our family. Lu Qing calmed down and thought carefully for a while. He had a clear understanding of the conditions for a martial artist to reach the physical invulnerability stage. First, the strength of the body had to reach a certain standard due to the mutation of the root pulp and the cultivation of the body. Connecting with the heaven and earth was like walking in the universe, full of danger. How could one do it without a qualified, protective suit? Second, the spirit and root pulp had to resonate with the outside world, and the intensity was not low. This was the basic condition for a breakthrough. Third, the realm of all-seeing God, or super-strong innate talent. Without these, one would not be able to control the minute details of the body and establish a connection with the outside world. And with it, the second condition could be twice the result with half the effort, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. Fourth, a strong willpower. This was the key to breaking through the final barrier. It was like a ship that was ready, but to cross the river, one still needed a helmsman. Lu Cheng's supernatural ability had awakened for the 3rd time. His physical strength had long surpassed the standard, and he already had the 3rd condition. Now, he only needed to change the visualization, adjust the minute details, and achieve resonance. When that time came, everything would be ready, except for the east wind. These conditions, other than all-seeing God, were all part of the grinding process. Therefore, the earlier one reached the high pin, the more time one had to train, and the easier it would be for them to reach the physical invulnerability stage. It was no wonder that many inhumans would enter the war-torn zones for real practical training. The stimulation between life and death could indeed strengthen one's willpower and help them take the final step. Of course, the breakthrough was a process, not a node. Even if one broke through the barrier at the last moment, it would still take 10 to 20 days to connect with the heaven and earth, adjust according to the feedback, and establish a solid connection. Only when all this was done would one be a true physical invulnerability mighty one. Thinking of this, Lu Qing smiled and said to Yenjika, "Help me watch. I'll give it a try." Okay. The new Danqi expert, Cuckoo, was eager to try and keep a lookout for her surroundings. Lu Qing stood in a still stance, gathered his qi and blood in his dantian, and let the universe of darkness and stars take shape and rotate slowly. This time, he didn't do things like writing the 9 words formula. Instead, he raised his willpower, messed up his mind, and let it spread throughout the dantian. The universe inhaled and exhaled, and the stars moved naturally. In that feeling of silence, Lu Qing felt as though he was truly standing outside the atmosphere, in the cold and dangerous darkness. The blazing sun in the distance breathed and expanded with the same rhythm, as though it had a subtle connection with him. Comprehending the resonance and the charm, Lu Qing only ended the Dan concentration realm after a few minutes. His force gushed out of him. He activated the confrontation formula, cleared his mind, and started visualizing again. This time, he wasn't visualizing Emperor Yen or Ice Spirit, but a combination of the two. The former was the star, heavy and scorching, while the latter was the void, cold and dark. They guided each other, transformed each other, rotated, and balanced. It was in line with the miniature universe after Lu Cheng's force concentration. After repeated attempts, Lu Qing finally completed this new visualization with reference when he was in a state of exhaustion. Visualizing refined the mind guided the root pulp, and the already balanced state of ice and fire adjusted slightly, making it even more harmonious. Beside him, Yan Zhike looked around and listened attentively, focusing on completing the task Lu Qing gave her. After an unknown period of time, she suddenly heard a series of thunderous sounds around her. They went from sparse to dense, and gradually merged into one. Amidst the banging sounds, she looked back at her husband in shock. She realized that the air around Lu Qing had formed a vortex, and when it landed on her, it was both hot and cold. It can't be, right? Yan Zhike was speechless, dumbfounded. At this moment, everything calmed down. Lu Qing slowly opened his eyes, and in the depths of his eyes was a dazzling darkness, like the perfect starry night sky in the highlands. You broke through. Yan Zhike blurted out. How is that possible? Lu Qing shook his head and laughed. He continued, however, maybe it's because the root pulp was guided by the Jin Dan during the third awakening of the supernatural ability. Ice and fire blended into one, and it wasn't difficult to achieve a resonance. So? Yan Zhike asked in confusion. Lu Qing smiled happily. So, after another 2 or 3 adjustments, maybe tonight or tomorrow morning, I'll have all the prerequisites for physical invulnerability. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.